Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Welcome. Fade to Black, Bespoke radio for the masses. How you doing? Today is Tuesday, October 13th. 286 days into the new year, 79 days left. We are live from the City of Angels Studios right here in Burbank, California. COA paper, makers of the Fade to Black e-juice. It's called Fader Loops. Just go to the COA banner at jimmychurchradio.com. You can use the promo code JimmyLive. That's Jimmy, L-I-V-E, for the Fader Not Special. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network, I'm your oh so humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Tonight we have very special guests, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Right now, right here on Fade to Black. Hugh Newman is joining us live from the UK. Jim Vieira live from the East Coast. Tomorrow night, Seth Shostak will be here. SETI. For a SETI update. And John Ventry will be here from MUFON and his partner. We'll be talking about their new report on the Kecksburg incident. It's compelling. Compelling new evidence. We'll be going over that tomorrow night. Great show tomorrow night. The call-in number, as always, is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black and the number 14. All right. What a show last night. I talked to Ron Felber today, and, the email, the tweets, the post, and so forth, just an outrageously great show last night with Ron Felber and the Mojave incident. And I got to say, I knew it was going to set the tone for this week on Fade to Black, that we were going to, hit the ground running on Monday. And we did. But tonight, I've been waiting to get Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira on the show for a long time. And to get them both at the same time is just going to be great. And, I said last night in Twitter after the show, you guys are so spoiled. This audience is so spoiled. And tonight we're going to do it all over again. So kick back and enjoy yourself tonight. It's going to be an amazing show. I want to say to all of the new listeners that are listening, all around the world, all across the United States, that this is a long-form conversation show. That's what we do. Okay? I do not, on this program, ever read questions, go down a list, the same. No, that's not what happens on this show. And you are here listening, if you're a new listener, because you've heard about how this show is done. Well, I'm telling you right now, that's what it is. If you're expecting, one of the things that just that makes me happy and angers me at the same time is when I get these emails and posts and tweets and whatever that go, dude, just ask questions. You know, they are so used to that type of format where a guest comes on, the host probably doesn't know anything about it, hasn't read the book, doesn't know anything about the past, doesn't know anything about the research. They got a list of questions in front of them, and they just go, okay, how'd you get your start? Okay, tell me about the book. For the audience that doesn't know who you are, tell us about yourself. You're not going to get that. That's not what this show is. And if that's what you're expecting, split. Go. Because this show is about intelligence. That's what this show is about. It's about having fun, having engaged conversation, discovery, and learning. That's what this show's about. And that's why you are here. If you're expecting something else, you're expecting just a run-of-the-mill podcast, whatever, something that somebody does once a week, once a month, that's not what this show is. That's not what this network is. That's not what Game Changer is. That is not what KGRA is. It's simply not. This is the real deal. All right? Okay. Let's go. Let's get this show cracking. So fired up, man. Just so fired up. Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira following up Ron Felber. How do we do it? You can thank Rita. All right. And by the way, if you would like to write for us for Fade to Blog, send an email to Rita at jimmychurchradio.com. You can go to the contact page as well and reach out to us. Nothing but the best. But if you can write and you are good and you have something to say, we will give you the platform. Heavy traffic that goes through jimmychurchradio.com every single day. People looking for vision. Fade to Blog is where it's at. Man, I enjoy that page. By the way, just to let everybody know, I was, just checking out Twitter before the show, and I saw the tweets about the SBBs. Everybody picking up your Studio Dome boombox. And it was Karen and Bob. Thank you so much. The special is still going on. And just go to the easiest way to do it is just go to jimmychurchradio.com and click on the Studio Dome banner. That will for the SBB. And you'll get a Buddy 4-port USB charger for free. That's a $19.95 value. Just enter the promo code Jimmy. You'll get the boombox for $49 and free shipping and the Buddy 4-port USB charger. Best deal on the net, best product, just amazing. And Studio Dome loves fader knots. Just let me tell you. All right, let's get the show cracking. Somebody sent me an email today that said that Edward Snowden was a government agent, not a whistleblower. And this is all just a big government agent thing. And that's why he's over in the Soviet Union and getting ready to come back here and reportedly, go to prison because it's just a big game. And it was a pretty interesting email. Pretty interesting. I mean, just what if? You know what I mean? Just what if? Yeah, totally funny. Let's get the show cracking. Today, Sacha Baron Cohen is 44. Who's let me light this up. It was Chris that got it. That's from Bob. I just quoted his tweet. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. There you go. Who was an Ali G fan? And Bruno, not the movie, not Talladega Nights. That was okay, and stuff. But who was an Ali G fan? I gotta tell you, I love that show. Man, was that Showtime or HBO? I can't remember. One of the two. You should bring that back. That was the real deal, man. Bruno, too. Bruno was too much. I'm letting too much of my personal life go. I'm telling you, I was a huge fan of Ollie G. Bruno, too. I got a Bruno T-shirt, by the way. I can't really wear it out in public, because it just, I can't. Plus, it's tight. But anyway, I got a Bruno T-shirt. Yes, I do. Love Dolly G. Also today, the man. I can't drive 55. Sammy Hagar is 68 years old. Love to have him on the show. I just can't afford him. Paul Simon today is 74. And you ready for this? All of us grown men out there. Here we go. Marie Osmond is 56. And going back, I'll tell it how it is right now. Going back to 1970, Marie Osmond, 1971, 72, 73, the Osmond Brothers show. All of us 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys out there, Marie was it, huh? And she still looks good doing those, what is she, Nutrisystem or one of those commercials. Marie Osmond today, 56 years old. All right. I wanted to light up Twitter really quick before the break. And I might have done this before. I don't know how I couldn't have, but I have to. Are you a Van Halen fan or a Van Hagar fan? It's an interesting, it's a paradox. It's the definition of paradox. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you think about it. Van Hagar or Van Halen. And it's the reason why it's a great question is because it's legit. Van Hagar, especially those first 2 or 3 records, I mean, they hold up today. But then you go back, and Van Halen is as classic and as great as of an American rock band ever. So, and for Sammy to come in and fill those shoes, it was a questionable thing, but it turned out to be pretty great and had moments of greatness, right? So what do we do? Is it Van Halen or Van Hagar? And I think where my bread is buttered on this question. But I'm throwing it out to you guys. Van Halen, I'm watching Twitter come in here. Van Halen, Hagar, Van Hagar. See, this is what I'm saying. It's interesting. To me, it's almost blasphemous. I would have said that 10 years ago. I would have went, no, Van Halen or death. That's it. That's where it's at. Okay? But Sammy had his moments. Sammy, yeah, see, Ziggy just said, but I got to say here, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Man, it's almost a tie. Van Halen, not Van Hagar. I knew that was coming from you, Kat. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. At JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. It's all live. It's all real. It's all now. Got the sandbox clicking off to my Diamond Dave from Surlana. Bloke from Oz posting some pictures of Van Halen right there. That's what I'm talking about. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Tonight, Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira, Giants, Megaliths. Everything is on tonight. My favorite subject. We're going to light it up here in a few minutes. I'll be back right after this.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fade-or-Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Matthew. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Where else can you get Van Halen conversation and megaliths in the same night? That is good radio. Just looking over here at Twitter, Jerry Skeet just said Van Halen 2, their best work. He's a man after my own heart. Everybody knows my favorite Van Halen album is Van Halen 2. And then Mike Spiteri comes back with Van Halen was Eddie with the guitar. Van Hagar was Eddie playing the organ or electric piano. That's actually a pretty good, interesting point. Pretty interesting point. Before I get to the news and everything else, I was just thinking during the break, I want to share a quick Van Halen story with you, and I'll make it quick. Don't worry about it. Back in the day, for the Balance Tour, I was working at Guitar Center in Hollywood, and we were supplying always Guitar Center Hollywood. Dave Weiderman, that was it. Dave's friends, old friends with the band, and so all their gear for each tour, every time they toured or whatever, would go through Guitar Center, and I had a pickup truck, and I was out just every day going to their rehearsals at a little rehearsal studio over here in the Valley. And keyboards and just stuff every single day, just something strange, and fill up my pickup truck, and I drive over and drop it off and listen to them rehearse at this little studio. And then they moved out of this studio and went over to Van Nuys Airport into an airplane hangar. And there they did the full setup, lights, staging, everything, PA, everything was there done. Now this is full on real rehearsals for a couple of weeks before they hit the road. And then I get this phone call, and from Maddie Brock. How are you, Maddie? And he goes, Jimmy, it's an emergency. We need some kind of rolling drum machine, some little portable thing for a click track for Alex right now. I was like, what? So I go and I get it. I'm talking about a $50 piece of gear, a $100 piece of gear, right? And I go and I'm all Van Halen needs this, right? And I jump in my pickup truck and I go out and I head over across the valley and pull in, go through all this security. And finally I pull up to the airplane hangar. The gates are open to the hangar. Outside of the hangar, a couple of, it's a row of Ferraris and stuff and tour buses and trucks and vans and people. And I pull right up, and Maddie's out, and it waves me up right to the front of the gate, and I go in, and boom, there it is. Boom, lights, camera, action. It's going on. The band is playing, and whatever, right? They're up there playing a song. And Maddie goes, come on, you got it? And I go, yeah. We walk in, walk across, over to the side of the stage, head left, up, around, through, up some stairs, all the way up to the friggin' drum riser. And there's Alex playing, turns around, looks at me, and starts playing with one hand. And I hand him this thing, and he looks at it. Perfect. Gives me the thumbs up, sets it down on the ground, boom, and they keep on playing. I stood there behind Alex for about 3 songs in this airplane hangar. And that was the first day of a bunch of rehearsals that I was able to attend. But how cool is that? It was just a drum machine. I'm just a salesman, at Guitar Center. But it was a moment in time. And I think about that all the time. And just how cool it was, how cool the band was, and how fun they made it. And there you go. I was just a lowly little punk. But, I was able to hang out with the band. That's it. I was just thinking about that during the break. It was longer than I intended. This is Fade to Black. Let's get to this day in history. In 1792, the White House cornerstone was laid. In 1792. After the, I did that today because of the Joshua P. Warren show that we did last week with the construction inside the White House. And I was thinking, man, that cornerstone was probably right where that ghost pic was taken. 1792. Cornerstone was laid for the White House. Fader facts. The first novel ever written on a typewriter was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. That is a Fader fact. Now let's get to all the news that you know nothing about. Yes, I know. As dramatic as this is, it is the headline raging around the world right now. Playboy magazine has announced that the magazine will no longer print nude images of women. They're going PG-13. That's right. Wow. Events this month are spotlighting the Kennedy Space Center's role in promoting launches for the fast-growing field of mini satellites known as CubeSats. I've been talking about this for probably the last 6 months on the show. Well, last Thursday here in California, we posted a picture of a launch out at Vandenberg Air Force Base that was taken by a friend of mine, Paul Alec. And Paul, who lives out there, snapped this picture of this launch in Vandenberg. And in the picture, and if you go to our Facebook page for Jimmy Church Radio, you scroll down, you'll see the picture of the launch. Paul took this himself. And he took the picture of the launch, but what he didn't realize until later when he looked at the picture was this weird spiraling S-shape thing off to the left. Well, that launch at Vandenberg was launching a bunch of these mini satellites. Okay? Last Thursday, right here, the Kennedy Space Center managers helped a handful of CubeSats hitch rides on an Atlas V rocket right here at Vandenberg. And today, representative from KSC's Launch Services program will discuss roughly a $17 million award that they have made to several companies developing small rockets that could offer CubeSats more frequent, inexpensive, and timely launches. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Gattaca in that, small, inexpensive rockets, small payloads that aren't that heavy. Boom, these things could potentially be taking off every day. It's interesting. Race. Not Race Hobbs. Race, R-A-C-E. That is the ticker symbol that Ferrari will use when it debuts on the New York Stock Exchange with a $10 billion valuation in the next couple of months. Parent company Fiat Chrysler said yesterday that it plans to set a price of $48 to $52 per Ferrari share and intends to sell about 10% of the company in the initial public offering. The company hopes to raise just about $1 billion for investors. Ferrari is going public. And I just got to say, Ferrari, the reason why that is good stock, Ferrari typically limits their production to about 7,000 cars a year. That's it. That's all they do. They do about $3.5–4 billion in business with 7,000 cars. They keep the quality there. The wait list for a new Ferrari is a year or two. You want a new Ferrari, go to a Ferrari dealership. You're not going to get one. All those new Ferraris you see at a Ferrari dealership belong to somebody else. That's just the way that it is. And there will always be more demand than the supply. That's the way that they run their business. And it's an excellent business model. I'm surprised they're going public, but it's cool that you can own a piece of Ferrari. The main role in regulating the oil market has transferred from Saudi Arabia, OPEC, that whole cartel, to the U.S. That's right. We are now the leading energy producer in the world. And this is according to Rosneft CEO Igor Sechin. Shale deposits are not only the only thing that is factored in here. According to Sechin, besides shale, the U.S. has all the factors influencing the development of a competitive oil market. This means financial resources, financial derivatives, stock exchanges, a developed system of pipelines, and a larger number of contractors working in the country. He said all of this today at the Russia Calling Forum in Moscow. Very interesting. I knew this was going to happen, and it did. And apparently just once, which I was surprised about. The statue of Christopher Columbus in downtown Detroit was splattered with red paint and had an axe taped to its forehead, an apparent protest of Columbus Day, marking the anniversary of his landing in the Americas, allegedly. Detroit police are investigating the incident, which they say most likely took place on Sunday evening because Columbus Day is a holiday. No city workers were available to take down the axe or clean up the statue. Now, it was just taped, okay? It wasn't like, hacked into the forehead of Columbus. But when you look at the picture, it was actually well done, kids. Good job. And that's it. Let's get to it. Let's get the guys in here. Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira are with us. Giants, megaliths, everything is on the table tonight. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be back with Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira right after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code JimmyLive. That's Jimmy, L-I-V-E, for the Fadernaut special. The website, coavapor.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you. And your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile Talk Radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
All right, you Fadernauts. Studio Dome has done it once again. A new Studio Dome Fadernaut special. Introducing the Studio Dome Boom Box Bluetooth speaker. It's got a rear-firing bass film subwoofer and dual 52mm main speakers. You'll never listen to your tablet or cell phone speakers again. Just click on the Studio Dome banner, use the promo code Jimmy, and you'll get the SBB for $49 and free shipping. And get a Buddy 4-port USB charger for free. That's a $19.99 value right there. And they'll throw in a Buddy in the box. It's the best deal on the net anywhere. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner, enter the promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight we have very special guest Hugh Newman live from the UK, Jim Vieira live from the East Coast. Tomorrow night, Seth Shostak from SETI will be here, and John Ventry from MUFON. Great show tomorrow night. It will be live right here. Tonight, Hugh Newman is with us. He's live from the UK. He is an Earth Mysteries and Megalithic science researcher. He organizes the Megalithmania conferences, tours, and meetups in Glastonbury, UK, North America, Peru, Egypt, Mexico, and South Africa. His most recent book has been published by Wooden Books. He has spoken at conferences in the UK, Malta, France, Peru, Bosnia, and North America. He has appeared on BBC TV, Sky Channel, and on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. Jim Vieira. He is a stonemason, a writer, a researcher, and a member of the New England Antiquities Research Association. He has studied the mysteries of ancient America for over 20 years and is a frequent contributor to the Shelburne Falls Independent and Ancient American magazine. He has presented at the prestigious TEDx conference and has appeared on Coast to Coast AM. He is currently writing a book with fellow researcher Hugh Newman and is the star of History Channel's Search for the Lost Giants. I would like to welcome live for the first time to Fade to Black, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Hey, guys, how are you?
Very good, thanks.
Jimmy, how you doing?
It's going to be great. What we have to do is try to figure out how to not talk over each other because I'm going to be yapping all night. So, you know, we got to figure this out. But again, hey, guys, seriously, welcome to the program. And since you're both here for the first time, I do a disclaimer with all of my first-time guests, which is it's just you and I, the three of us, sitting on my couch, talking, having a good time as friends. Where we start, we start. Where we end, but we end as friends. Are you guys ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, so I don't know where to start, but let me announce to the audience, Hugh is the one with the funky accent. Okay? Jim's Bostonian accent isn't considered funky, you know, so there you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, I have so much to discuss. There's so much going on in the world right now, and you guys are very busy, and of course we have Jim's show on History Channel, and Hugh, you're doing your conferences over there, and you're tooling around the world with Brian Forrester and so forth. So we have a lot to talk about, but I kind of wanted to start here. Let me start with Jim for a second, and I wanted to get a couple of things out of the way about the TEDx conference, and Hugh, you can jump in at any point, by the way.
Okay, I will do.
Yes, this is a subject that I'm very, very, very passionate about, which is hardcore shutdown of freedom of thought with TEDx, and I consider it shameless censorship on their part. Now, that's my position. But when I see friends of mine and fellow researchers go out there and present at TEDx, or not get the opportunity to present at TEDx because of their views, I think it's wrong, even though that's my opinion. But Jim, you went through this, and so let's just talk about that for a second. How were you invited, and what was the atmosphere like? Before the conference as opposed to after?
Certainly, I'll give you my take on it. Stacy Contrabecki, a friend from Shelburne Falls, invited me to speak at the conference. I had done some lectures at Greenfield Community College and other venues, basically just giving my research, my historical detective findings about the case I was trying to make of Native American civilizations building with stonework in the northeast of the United States. And we know that all around the country, Native peoples built with stone thousands of years ago. But in the northeast, it's kind of a contested issue. And I was trying to make that case and use historical documentation and other methods to kind of make the point. So within that vein of research, or while researching those things in the historical documents, I started to uncover giant skeleton reports. So Stacy thought it'd be good if I spoke because a lot of people have an interest in the landscape around here in New England and the idea that Native Americans may have built with stone. And I gave the talk, and it was fine, and Stacy's a friend of mine. I gave the talk, and then it went viral, and then it ended up getting like 120,000 views right off the bat and became the most popular TEDx in the world. And then it was removed by the higher-ups at TEDx. And then I was dealing with Stacey. I said, what the hell is going on? And I tried to communicate with the people who took it down. They wouldn't answer my email. They wouldn't talk to me in person. They were very dismissive and quite frankly rude about the whole event. And I said, listen, I wasn't making like this scientific case. I was saying this is kind of interesting information that anybody would find fascinating. Like, don't you think it's very intriguing that there's like 1,000 accounts of giant skeletons 7 foot and taller on Earth all around the country with strange anatomic anomalies like double rows of teeth, by well-respected historians, on and on. And the response I got from they talked to an archaeologist in the Midwest, showed him my video, and then he made all these assertions that weren't true on top of everything else. Like, I don't want to be long-winded, but, it really kind of pissed me off. I'm like, I'm just sharing kind of interesting information. What's wrong with this? But my take is, towards the end, I'll quickly say my friend Dean Saikun, he's the CEO of Dean's Beans, and he meets with CEOs all the time. And he did a talk before mine, basically about sociopaths rising to positions of power in corporate America. And it just really started getting on my skin because I had just written an article, and I had done a lot of research on this, the higher-ups at the Smithsonian for years, being involved in all kinds of lousy controversies and conspiracies of covering up asbestos contamination and basically their dealings with the Koch brothers. And I got into that, and I said it's reprehensible that they're receiving $50 million from these environmental criminals, shameless sociopaths, the Koch brothers. And I really think that's what got my video pulled because, you never see anybody speak the freaking truth anytime. It's all corporate horseshit, you know what I mean? For like 25 years now, you never hear a straight sentence out of anybody. And I just think people saw me talking and say, geez, either this guy's going to get whacked or it's very intriguing that somebody is calling out a large institution and the Koch brothers, who everybody loathes in this country. So that's my kind of long-winded explanation of the TEDx experience.
Well, the whole idea behind TEDx, and I've had actual friends of mine, one in particular that I grew up with that spoke at TEDx, and I'm talking about 8th grade. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate and I watch, but the whole idea behind TEDx is about vision. What makes these movers and shakers around the world? How what are they thinking? And let's look to the future. Let's look to the past. And what makes my brain work the way that it does? Well, let's all talk together and have an open conversation about these subjects. Well, that's what TEDx is based on. It's not this whole censorship thing where they're going to approve or not what happens, and they're going to control the conversation and the thought is the opposite of the foundation of the conference itself. Am I right?
Absolutely right. And Rupert Sheldrake and Graham Hancock I would imagine say the same thing. And
man. Oh man.
It is, Hughes knows, full well about that. He's friends with Graham and has him at his conferences. And, it's funny because regardless if, say, we're right or wrong about our theories is irrelevant. It's just kind of like encouraging historical research, encouraging people to think differently. Civilizations all throughout history predominantly have been wrong with the theories they think are scientific fact or fact in general. What do we have wrong? Theories are disproven all the time. And why all the vitriol when somebody just has a different idea? It's like that to me. So it's left to us. I'm an economist. We all have different backgrounds. I'm not. I probably wanted to be an archaeologist and an anthropologist, but I'm not. Although I certainly have done my reading of orthodox anthropology and archaeology over the last 20 years. But it's left to people like us who to explore these mysteries, and it's crazy, and we're derided sometimes for being like untrained or taken in by wild ideas or something like that. It's just not true. It's just like we have an open mind and can look at things holographically and objectively. And it's sad that we've forgotten these freaking lessons after thousands of years. And it's just like, hey, I could be wrong. I'm wrong all the time. But what's the problem with investigating? Really?
Well, we were supposed to learn and grow up. And in this, we persecuted scientists and free thinkers so much in the past that we're embarrassed about today that actually went down. And it goes on and on and on. We don't need to list, the hundreds of guys throughout history that turned out to be right and were proven right. But I thought we learned from that lesson, So when it comes to science and when it comes to archaeology and it comes to history and it comes to science, you need to free think and think outside of the box. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. We might as well just go back to writing on stone tablets and be happy there instead of having vision. And that's what TEDx is supposed to be about.
Yes. And, it is to a certain extent. And then, then you get into other realms of thought, and then it gets unsettling. Who has a monopoly on what the nature of reality is? I just watched this great miniseries on PBS, Brian Greene's Fabric of the Cosmos, and quantum physicists uniformly agree that, like, time is an illusion, essentially, that the whole universe is basically a projection from outside of the universe of time and space, and they don't know where the hell it's coming from. That there are all these things that are basically understood by quantum physicists now that are so wild, like when you look at a object 20 billion light years away, you change it, by viewing it, you change it at the subatomic level. But that's not because you reach out, like it is coming towards you. It is coming from the mind, essentially, or the holographic mind that's creating the universe. So the moral of the story is who are we to say what reality is. It's really, I try to encourage people to think outside the box all the time and never claim to have all the answers. And I am perfectly fine with people having different theories. It's just kind of that arrogance that really disconcerting as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and to bring in the Smithsonian on that from their part, I think was wrong too. But nonetheless, okay, let's get. Hey, Hugh, how are you, man?
Let's get Hugh in here.
I'm very good, Jim and Jimmy.
And Hugh,
what's up, Hugh?
Yeah, Hugh, big Hugh.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. Is this, Hugh, for you, kind of the same question that I threw out there at Jim? Is you are, you and your friends, our friends, are out there, changing the paradigm or attempting to, and trying to get people to think another way and to look at things. And you're fighting that same good fight. I mean, do you get tired? I mean, do you ever go to bed going, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go sell cars. I'm done with this.
Yeah, you can get that way. Yeah, I mean, especially some of the subjects me and Jim are getting into with the giant skeletons and things like that. You really do get people, any opportunity to attack you. But for some reason, this particular subject, I mean, I'm very much into the ancient megalithic sites as well, which I travel a lot to explore. But with the giants, there's something about it. It really kind of gets people. It really annoys people, especially those that don't think alternatively. So they find it really challenging that they've either been duped all this time or they just can't understand it. So they just give you a hard time. I mean, there's a bunch of skeptics. I'm not going to name any names, but they've just got it. They kind of get it in for you. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to stick to your guns and just do what you do and just keep pushing forward. And I think me and Jim have kind of like teamed up, and we're just going to go for it and just see what happens, because there's just too much. There's too much stuff that's been happening in our past, in our history and prehistory, that just isn't being addressed in the mainstream, and it isn't being addressed by academia and by science as such. It is in some circles, very quietly here and there, but because it goes against the standard paradigm that we're all battling against, which is kind of what the world belongs to, then we are going to ruffle a few feathers, and it's going to become, we are going to get attacked. But whatever, we're pretty cool, we're tough, we're just going to keep going and present our truth. I mean, anything that, with the giants, with super ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe and Peru and things like that, it's controversial. There's stuff happening which just is not accepted. So, and that makes it more interesting to research. It makes you want to get into it. It makes you want to uncover the truth and see what's being covered up and just try and find out what's going on. Being independent, being like, I'm trained as a journalist and a filmmaker, then it gives you the freedom to do that. You don't need academic qualifications to really push forward. And I respect people like Graham Hancock and others who don't have academic qualifications. They're just doing it because they have a passion. In England, people like me and Graham and others, I call them antiquarians. It's an old English term for someone who loves researching and investigating, excavating ancient sites, ancient mysteries, and you don't need to be qualified. This was before this was a name given before archaeology was even invented.
Right.
And so I think antiquarian is the right term, because you're not tied down by academic constraints, and you can just get on with it and produce it and push forward, and just you take the crap, you just deal with it and just keep pushing on.
Well, one of the frustrating things, I think, for this audience as well as myself, is when I hear somebody say, well, he's not an archaeologist, so he can't say. You know what? You don't have to be an archaeologist or a history major to question the man. You don't. It's quite all right. And that's what frustrates. And the other day on this program, I'll think of who said it here in just a second, but one of my guests was on, and it was Heather Lynn. You guys know Heather Lynn. So Heather Lynn was on, and she goes, why is it okay for an amateur astronomer to make discoveries in the solar system all the time, and that's okay, but an amateur archaeologist is shunned, and they can't have it both ways? Isn't that an interesting point to ponder?
Well, yeah, I actually make that point a lot, and I use astronomy. I'm like the professional and the amateur astronomers have very good relationships, and amateurs do make discoveries all the time, and they work together with professionals. And I, thankfully, in the several shows I've done for the History Channel, I've worked with several archaeological teams, and I've been friends with archaeologists and anthropologists for quite a while, and we don't agree on everything, but I try to bring them in and try to just tackle different subjects. But I don't see a lot of that, though, in archaeology and anthropology. There's just too much exclusion and too much elitism, and I don't know if it's just human nature or if it's specific to the discipline, because there's a lot of insecurity around archaeology and anthropology, because essentially it's just educated guesswork. It's not like scientific proofs like mathematics. Maybe that's some of it, but whatever it is, it's a very true statement that I wish there were more camaraderie. Like I'm working on a show right now. It's in 2 weeks. It airs on the Lost Colony of Roanoke on the History Channel, and it's like I see all the infighting with archaeologists, and instead of like, hey, that's a great job, maybe you need more information, they're like taking each other out at the knees, and I'm like, why is that? Why isn't there more respect for other people and what they're trying to do? And maybe you don't agree with their opinions, but this whole thing for me, and I know for Hugh, has been a study in human nature, quite honestly, and how people behave, and it's like a psychological experiment.
Yeah, it totally is. All I need to say is Zahi Haiwas, and then there you go. So anyway, I had to do it once during the show. But let me ask you both this before, and I'll get you both the answer before we head to a break here in a few minutes, which is, one of the funnest things that I like to look at is the photographs of giants, not only throughout history, but also today on the net. They're all over the place. Obviously, some are fake, some are hoaxed. But if you go back 100 years and you're looking at, there was just hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs of these giants. But how were they faking, though? And I'm sure that they were, but that some are. But why would they only fake those? They didn't fake other photos. It just seems like the only thing that they ever really faked back in 1900 was a gravesite with a giant skeleton in it. I didn't see other hoaxed photographs of ships or planes or UFO. But suddenly, every time there's a giant photograph, from 1900 to 1890, it's faked, it's hoaxed. Why is that? And are there examples of genuine giant photographs from the 18 and 1900s?
I guess I can go first. There is, let's see, in our book we have a photo from actually 1940 from a WPA dig of a skull that's essentially twice the normal size. The headline in the Victoria Advocate was "Beach Giant Found." The Works Progress Administration did a series of digs during the Depression at the end of the 1930s to get people back to work, and William Duffin was the archaeologist who ran the site, and they found a skull that was absolutely enormous, twice the normal size. There's a picture of it. We have it in our book. The Marcus Goldstein, the physical anthropologist, analyzed it, and he determined there was no endocrine pathology, there was no knobbing in knuckles or acromegaly, that it was not a disease condition. In 1913, from a Rosicrucian magazine, actually, we have a picture of several gigantic skulls. The headline, or the story says that they were 10 feet tall, which sounds almost too tall to believe, but pretty impressive skull pictures. We have all the photographs that we've encountered are in our book. There's a contested mummy next to Smithsonian scientists from 1894, and I think that's the original story. And that mummy is 8 foot 4 inches tall, and we talk about the whole story in the book. I just feel like you have so many stories for so long, and the photograph, the photographs that are in the internet now of these stupid, giants that are clearly fake just muddy the waters. I almost wonder. It almost seems like a concerted effort to make you look like a fool if you're investigating this, taking it seriously. There's something very strange about all these giant skeleton reports a photo showing up on the internet at the time that people are really diving into the research. But, Hugh and I just finished a book after several years, Giants on Record, and we've put all the photographic evidence we have, and basically it's like 420 pages of, years of research, and I'll throw it to Hugh and see what his take on it is.
Well, I'm looking at the WPA skull here. That thing is huge.
Right?
When you say twice as big, it okay, yeah, well, no, I guess it is twice as big. It looks bigger than that, though. That thing is, now, I'm just imagining, how tall do you think that guy was?
If it's twice the normal size, I contacted the Texas Archaeological Research Lab, actually, and spoke to an archaeologist there, and they don't have the skull, unfortunately. I did say, isn't that kind of odd? And he said, well, not really. We catalog and we deal with like hundreds of thousands of artifacts, and it might have got lost in the shuffle. And I was kind of a little miffed because it would have been good to see it, of course. Like in the Smithsonian report of 1873 in Alton, Illinois, one of the scientists reports a 36-inch skull circumference, and with other large skulls that crumble to dust. There's no photographic evidence by a Smithsonian scientist. 36 inches, that's outrageous. And with others like that. And as Ross Hamilton talks about, some of these tombs are so ancient, when you open them, the skeletons crumble to dust. And I mentioned that in my TEDx talk. I said, even in the Smithsonian ethnology reports, it talks about that. And the archaeologists who basically tried to undercut what I was saying, basically claimed that I made it up to get out of providing evidence, which is just not true. It's in the Smithsonian ethnology reports. So you have a lot, unfortunately, of massive, unbelievable size skeletons that were cataloged sometimes by respected scientists of the time, and they just don't exist anymore because they crumble to dust.
Hugh, real quick, 60 seconds before we head into break.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big problems is these photos on the net. There was a competition, a graphic design competition in 2002 on the worth1000.com website to create fake pictures of archaeological digs, most notably giants. So even quite well-known authors and websites and blogs have been posting these around, and we get them posted on our wall and ask about what they are. But like Jim said, they've really muddied the water, and there are so many. They're so good, these Photoshop things. They're so good. People are duped by them, and so we've actually put a disclaimer in the book and presented which ones are the hoaxes at the very start of the book, so we can clear away the rubbish and get to know what the true stories are, because there's so many. Thousands of compelling reports from academics who clearly could measure things properly, that you can't deny it, regardless of these fake photos or not.
Let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira are with us. Giants, megaliths, all of my favorite subjects, all night long on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be back. More with Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you and Hillary for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Back. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira are with us. It's a megalithic Giants kind of evening around here, Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Seth Shostak will be here from SETI and John Ventry from MUFON. Hey, guys, I wanted to ask, this is probably more of a Jim question, but, you know, Catalina Island is right here in our backyard. Jim, you know where I'm going with this. And and I watched that I couldn't wait for that episode to come up on History Channel, and so tell the audience about Ralph Glidden and what are your conclusions about what you found out there?
Well, Glidden was funded by the Hay Foundation out of New York City, I think in the 1920s. He was not trained as an archaeologist, but he fancied himself one, and he wanted to be portrayed as one. And archaeology, with the finding of King Tut's tomb, it was obviously things were ramping up, and everybody wanted to make spectacular finds. And Glidden eventually lost his funding, and he collected 3,781 skeletons from all of the Channel Islands. So he excavated grave sites on San Nicolas, Catalina, Santa Rosa, and really desecrated an enormous amount of sites. But the reality is that he didn't claim to have found, giant after giant, but he measured and talked about finding over 7-foot skeletons. When we filmed the show, we found in his records. Well, Judge Ernest Wendell, the judge of Avalon, Catalina, worked with Glidden, and he was well respected. And he talked about finding a 28-inch femur bone on San Nicolas Island, and which is enormous. That's well over 8 foot tall. And also a picture we have of 7 foot 2 1/4 inch skeleton with I think a hat size of size 10.5. We talked to a former judge on the island who spoke about the people there that, the legends were that they're well over 7 foot tall. But we also went through the records and we found photographs that L.A. Marzulli had found previously, and he had them analyzed. And we had L.A. on the show, and that it clearly shows that the skeleton that we think is the one on San Nicolas Island with the 28-inch femur is the one in the photograph. And they had it analyzed, people that L.A. Marzulli sent it out to, and we had L.A. on the show presenting his findings. The thing is that there's nothing further that can be done, because obviously you can't go and dig any grave sites or whatever, and the bones have been repatriated. But it's really, our conclusion that I believe that there were several over 7-foot skeletons and over 8-foot skeletons unearthed by Glidden, and actually many. And it goes way back to the 1850s with other, it's not just Glidden. On all the Channel Islands, there have been reports of well over 7-foot, 8-foot skeletons found over and over again, hundreds in fact. So it's not just about Glidden. But Glidden was, had a macabre museum. My brother and I, the truth be told, the last night we were there, we got the most awful nightmares. I want to get the hell off that island. And I hate to say it, I just felt it was like haunted because of all the desecration of the grave sites. And, so we portray that in the show, and we talked about how Glidden acted like the Grim Reaper and how disconcerting it was to see child burials and things like that. So hopefully that part came across in the show. Is just like when you have no respect for human remains, you kind of suck,
Yeah, well, totally. And what about the with all the research that I've done, and I've talked to L.A. about this numerous times as well, the stories that repeated themselves about not only Glidden's collection, but everything else on the Channel Islands and St. Nicholas that the Smithsonian dumped into the ocean, just dumped the bones. Were you?
Well, I've heard, there were shadowy figures and weird things, and Wrigley was involved, and even the John Borangina, the former curator at the museum, he hooked me up with this guy. I have his email still, but I haven't been able to get in touch with him, that had this story about a mysterious doctor. The name it's in the back of my head, but anyways, he talked about bones being dumped in the ocean in the Pacific, and that the Fowler Museum did not receive the bulk of Glidden's collection. I'll tell you this, from beginning to end, over 100 years of giant skeleton reports in the Channel Islands, there are very few bones of any size remaining, and which just begs the question, because that's one of the big issues is like, oh, show me the bones. And I'm like, from 1850 to 1930, there were thousands of graves unearthed, and if they were all 5'8", where are they? It's human remains. It's not a renewable resource. People put them on display. The people are infantile. They dig into graves with no respect. They steal all the items. They throw the bones in the ditch. They use bone, like where the 8-foot skeleton with double rows of teeth was found in Deerfield, Mass. They took like thousands of skeletons and used it as road fill. You know what I mean? When they unearthed all this stuff, widening the roads and plowing fields. There was no respect for remains. So, it is not on us to produce the 10-foot skeleton. It's on us to produce a good story and a good historical detective, story, basically.
What is what's the defense for the Smithsonian for hiding, the possibility of giants existing? That's the part for me. I'm not defending the Smithsonian. I'm pissed off, but
I'll give my take, but I'll make it quick because I've been chewing up all the time. I want to hear Hugh's take on it. And we talked to Ross last night. Actually, it was very interesting. I would say, like Dennis Stanford is head of anthropology at the Smithsonian now, and I like him. I like Dennis. I saw him talk. I think he's excellent. He has the Solutrean hypothesis based on haplogroup X, mitochondrial DNA testing. I think he's an open-minded thinker. He takes a lot of heat. To say that like a modern-day anthropologist and archaeologist, like they're all involved in the cover-up, isn't a true statement. But 100 years ago, I certainly think there might have been some funny business. There was a lot of racist lunatics running the Smithsonian, like Dr. Herb Leachka. There are a lot of reports. We have the Smithsonian files in our chapter that are in their own records, or they have reported to receive remains. And one of the problems is, I think, is that there is so much real conspiracy. Building 7. Nobody trusts the government who has a brain. There are things that are legitimate. There are some red herrings and fake conspiracy out there, but there are some real legitimate ones. So people are irritated. They know they're not getting the truth, but sometimes it can bleed over, and you can just like say the freaking Smithsonian, they get the secret vaults. I think it's more like Ross said. It's a conspiracy of racism and incompetence and stuck paradigms that has bled into the present era. But I'll see what Hugh's take on it is.
Well, yeah, I'm going to throw this over to Hugh. Hugh, do you have the same issues in the UK that Jim and others have over here with the Smithsonian and the man in general? Do you fight that same fight over there?
You do get certain, there are quite a handful of skeletal remains being found here that are of giant stature, and they're impossible to locate. I mean, I've inquired at a few museums and historical societies and certain places, and looked into some records, and you kind of draw to a blank. I mean, it's a bit more open here. I mean, there are remains, there are skulls and skeletons actually on display, unlike they are in America because of NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. You don't get that so much here, but there is a general kind of thing here that a lot of the remains were found a lot longer ago than they were in America, because obviously America's a young country, whereas here things were being found thousands of years ago. Even BC, they were being discovered, and the different cultures coming into Britain. So it's a tougher thing. It's a tougher thing here in one way, because you've got the age and you've got the sort of time scale is much greater, and so it's really hard to locate things. I mean, I've been looking for some bones near Cambridge in England, right near where I used to live, that are supposedly found up on the hills there, these giant bones. And we can't find them. And I'm working with an archaeologist called Michelle Bullivant to try and locate them, and we can't do it. And that was only 200 years ago. So you do get that. But obviously the Smithsonian has become the kind of black hole where all the good things disappear, because if people just read the Smithsonian annual reports, especially the 5th and the 12th, they're the most interesting ones for any budding giantologist, you'll find that they certainly did discover many treasures, skeletons, skulls, artifacts, certain types of inscriptions and things like this. But you actually just directly ask the Smithsonian, well, can I have a look at this, please? Because I've seen the accession cards. I've seen that you've received them. They were reported in this account, this excavation with such and such, and they know nothing about it. So the fact that we're not even talking about the ones that were sent to the Smithsonian from individuals around the country. We're talking about stuff in their own annual reports,
right,
which they excavated the mounds, they published it,
right,
and they put it out there, and they were published widely, and we have copies of them, and we've read them, and the fact that they've gone missing does raise alarm bells. I mean, all the other things that were supposedly sent to the Smithsonian by other individuals we don't know about, because a lot of that is speculation. But even some of those, we have accession cards. We found some, and we found records of them receiving things and being discussed even in some of their reports. And so there is a problem there. I mean, the idea of a conspiracy kind of does make sense, if you sort of piece it together. It's not like a grand Illuminati type thing, I don't think. I think there's something more subtle going on here, with certain people's agendas influencing others, and as Jim mentioned, there is hints of racism there in the early days. Obviously, Hadlichka, who joined the Smithsonian in the early 1900s, he was a known eugenicist, and he wasn't too keen on any foreign races, especially in that country, and they used to measure the skulls to try and work out who was the smartest, and all the white people supposedly had the biggest skulls. But then, as we briefly discussed, suddenly they were finding skulls. Hadlichka found skulls that were 36 inches circumference,
right,
which is almost twice the girth of a normal human skull. So it kind of clearly they were finding things that went against what they were trying to promote, which was manifest destiny, evolution, Charles Darwin's version of evolution, and other sort of subtle agendas to make sure the Native Americans were seen as savages and they could take over the land, and it'd be land grabbing. And there's quite a lot of research done by certain authors. J. Edgar Smoot's done a fantastic book that talks all about the early days of the Smithsonian, and David Childress's early article, Smithsonian Gate, that came out back in the 90s.
Right.
That was quite compelling as well. And I think Ross Hamilton has really tackled it brilliantly in his book, A Tradition of Giants and A Holocaust of Giants. Brilliant books that he's produced himself, and I do recommend people check out his work, because he was the one. He was the guy who kind of made us realize there was something going on here that needs to be questioned.
Well, before I've got one quick question, but I just have to get this in really quick. I want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody up in Canada. Okay, I got that out of the way. It's Canadian, Thanksgiving Day up there. Okay, but has it become easy for the Smithsonian, no matter what the subject is, whether it's objects from Egypt or South America, the United States, whatever that they have housed, when some kind of inquisitor comes along, that they just plain and simply just answer, we don't know, it's lost, or our archives, our inventory is too huge and we can't go and check it out, we don't have the time. And that just seems to be the boilerplate answer to anybody that has a question.
Yeah, it does seem like a frustrating amount of red tape. Whether what you're trying to investigate is valid or not, it seems like the whole system is working against kind of a transparency that we all want. And, I will say my biggest beef with the Smithsonian is they're colluding with the Koch brothers, frankly. And the Christian Samper is his name. These figures that have been in the higher up echelon of the Smithsonian at different positions. The things they said, like there was a guy, a physicist, Rom was his name, who approached this guy Samper at a conference, and he blindsided him with a 60 minutes question that wasn't supposed to be asked. He said, David Koch funds you. What is your take? And he's all flustered, and he's like, "Yo, David Koch, he's a man who believes strongly in science. Just a bunch of corporate horseshit, basically." And you see these, rank and file people at the Smithsonian just doing their job, but then you see, what happens is all these positions open up for sociopaths, essentially, in corporate America. They just rise to the top, not because they're so cunning. It's because whoever will sell out the most, is just going to rise to the top, because the corporation is a self-sustaining, bit of artificial intelligence. It doesn't care about the goodwill of all, or if they're poisoning the river or giving people cancer or whatever's going on. They're just like this eternal virus on the planet. And so you have these people that, just get in positions of power. And it happens with the Smithsonian, where you just have, the higher-ups, Lawrence Small, former Citibank CEO, that resigns in disgrace, them covering up asbestosis contamination. I wrote about this in my article in Ancient American. And the guy who was got asbestosis working there, his name escapes me, he talked about how it was in the open areas where millions of people go, and they docked him pay, and he lost his position, and, he took it up. They were fined by OSHA for 3 different accounts. And, the moral of the story is, just because, you think a certain way about an institution, look deeper, and you're going to find this kind of behavior. So you get into controversial subjects. You're not going to be, open about and fuzzy, let's discuss this. They'll shut you down, they'll ridicule you, and there is no, transparency to be had about these things you and I are talking about giant skeletons, about races of the tall ones. And Hugh and I, in our book, we come from a million different angles. And if you read it, and I hope you do, it's compelling. All the Native American oral traditions, virtually every explorer you can name that is well known, Drake, Smith, Coronado, Vespucci, Magellan, all reported meeting giant native peoples from Patagonia to Virginia. And I'm not talking about, 6'3". I'm like the skeptic would say. They're talking 7 foot, 8 foot. On the knees, this person was bigger than our entire crew, over and over again, all around the United States, all in Mexico, etc. The opinions of mystics, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, they all talked about giants. there is like so much circumstantial evidence. You just gotta be disingenuous to not think this deserves a greater look.
And you've got all of the religious text. Let's not forget that. And
absolutely, yes.
So, and
there's so much. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and although this isn't a religious show, but there's so much weight that is put on. It's kind of funny how you will hear the absolute orthodox historians and stuff turn around and quote the Bible. Well, the Bible says too. It's just like, wait a minute, you guys can't have it both ways. Either it's based on fact, and now you're saying that the Bible is fact, or other religions, their text are fact or not, and you've got to open up your minds to other possibilities out there. If you're going to open up your mind to that and quote that, and other points, they use the Bible for a calendar. If you're going to go and do that, then there's other things that would need to be discussed here. And that's just the way that it's frustrating for me to hear it, because it's I'm just going to say this direct. It's either you can't have it both ways, and that's what they're asking for. You know what I mean? But yet when it comes to their opinion is the only one that counts, and nobody else's does. And it goes right back to the TEDx situation. It was just like, nope, this is it, and there's nothing else to talk about here. That's it. It's so frustrating. Now, what I want to do really quick, and by the way, I do have the book. I just want to let you know, Jim.
Nice.
Okay. Let's take a little tour. Let's discuss your favorite sites around the world. I don't know what continent you want to start on first, but take us to your favorite places and let's discuss each one.
Hugh?
For sure. Well, just to be awkward, all of them are my favorite. Every single one of them, they're all amazing. I must admit that the more I look, the more I'm blown away. There's some very, very interesting sites that have obviously been discussed on your show. Obviously, Göbekli Tepe in southeast Turkey is one of those. I've been there a few times with Andrew Collins, went there with Graham Hancock back in 2013 as well, and we investigated it. And a site near there called Karahan Tepe, which is an unexcavated site within the same region, in the Tek Mountains near Sanliurfa, which is very close to Göbekli Tepe. And this is fascinating because you get these T-pillars popping out the top of the hill there. And there's many interesting legends and stories associated with that place. And Andrew Collins has done some brilliant research on that. So that's one that really grabs my attention. But I think as we've done this book about North America, there are some incredible sites that absolutely blew me away when I visited them in North America. There's just a couple of examples which really touched me. I had a real kind of sense of connecting with the ancestors. There's one in New England, it's actually New York State rather, called Balanced Rock, or North Salem Dolmen.
Yep.
And it's a huge mega dolmen, just like you find in Europe or any other part of the world, which really shouldn't be there. And you can just, if you go to North Salem, you can just drive about just to locate the fire station, and it's just outside the fire station by the side of the road. But the thing is, this is like a 60 to 90 ton block of granite, which doesn't naturally formed there, and it's resting on these 5 other stones, and there's a strange piezoelectrical effect, and it's also built on a fault line, so it's got this huge energetic effect that affects the whole area. There's even a road nearby called Giants Lane or something just up the road from there, so there, maybe giants did build it in prehistoric times. There's a couple of other places. One place I'll just quickly mention is a place in West Virginia called Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia. It's in the Ohio River Valley area, just slightly east of the main Ohio sites. But that site is like a powerhouse. There's something going on there. Giant skeletons came out of there in the early 1800s, according to various reports. There's also the Grave Creek Stone, which potentially has Phoenician-type writing on it, which could be linked to even the Bible lands, and the Middle East. It's got this sort of style of writing that Barry Fell and others investigated, and it's had these weird ghostly sightings all around there. And there's a whole complex stretching out from there, going on for several miles, with these stone towers up on these bluffs, and the whole area of the Kanawha Valley, and then you have further east going into the Ohio Valley. That is the center of giant territory, and there's some of these sites you can sense it. You can sense their presence. You can sense their energy, and they've kind of put a spell over that place. And if you go to the right places, you can get a real feel of it about what was really going on there. So there's a few little highlights from my travels.
Well, Jim, you're a stone guy, and you live on the East Coast. And when you go to Balanced Rock and look at that, I haven't been there. I've only seen pictures over the years. But that is about the stupidest, biggest thing you can imagine in your brain, right? That is I don't know, how many feet tall is that thing?
It is 90 tons. I would think it is about, probably the entire rock is probably like 9 or 10 feet high and about 7 to 8 feet across, maybe even larger. It's enormous.
It's enormous, and I just picture who was running around, North America at that time. It's one thing to think about the Egyptians moving stuff, but you look at this, and you just ask yourself, how the heck did they do that? Where'd they get the rock from? How did they get it up here? And who was the guy that said to the other guys, "Hey, man, let's prop this up on these other rocks here. Let's lift this up together."
It's funny. It's when we talk, there were all kinds of different theories about, say, the nature of giant people, if they exist in the past. Sometimes it's portrayed as malevolent or cannibalistic. I think a lot of the story in the United States is that the tall ones with these. This lineage that went back thousands of years with the shamans and the kind of revered rulers of different native peoples that really almost had shamanic powers. And there's a huge stone out here in Pittsfield called Balance Rock. And the native legend out here from the tribe that lived in the area in Lanesboro was that a shaman basically balanced the rock upon where it sits, as an act of, just displaying his expertise or his power. And you have, like Hugh said, there's something to it. There's something to this story of a royal bloodline that eventually died out. Ross Hamilton talks about it in his books, and we've talked to him at length, and he's worked on the book with us. And I think there's like a real human story here about, like when you ask what's my favorite site, in North America, it would be Cahokia. It's a 100-foot high earthen pyramid in Collinsville, Missouri. 14-acre base, that's 1 acre larger than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. It was part of a vast complex of 40,000 people or more, probably at its height in 1200 A.D. The Mississippian mound-building people built it. And, the site is just amazing. And on top, the great sun lived on top of this mound, Monk's Mound at Cahokia. And there was a 50-foot stockade and platform on top of where this revered ruler lived. And I just find it fascinating that when we were in school, in the U.S. particularly, we never heard or found out about, did you know that native civilizations built massive geometric forms that predicted eclipses?
Right.
That had, just 1,500 in the Ohio River Valley alone. Earthen pyramids. That's one thing that spurred me on when I read Greg Little's book about the mound builders. I never knew that. And I was like, I'm a voracious reader into a million different subjects, and I did not know that. And it just really inspired me to learn more. There's amazing stuff in the U.S. here. There's more of a story.
Hey, Jim, check this out. I'm from, I was born in Chicago, but raised in Indianapolis, right? And in 8th grade, to this day, I have never forgotten what our history, we went through an Indiana history class, right? A couple of semesters. And we get to and he's up and he's talking. We get to this section of the class about the mounds and the mound builders in Indiana, and I'm like, what the heck is a mound? We went through a couple of weeks on this, but and the photographs and the books and everything. But he said this to the class: they're big, they're beautiful, but we have no idea who built them. And it was one of the, and you say that, a teacher, says that to an 8th grader, that mars you for life, man. You're scarred. You're messed up. Because you're looking at these beautiful mounds, and they're big, too. Some of them are significant. But to say you don't know nothing, right? And that's what was taught in class. We don't have a clue.
Yeah, Angel Mounds. And,
yes, Angel Mounds.
Indiana,
yes.
No, there's all. Indiana, in fact, had stone hilltop forts. They had amazing. It's funny. All the states had a different, its own mound builder signature. Like Iowa and Wisconsin, you get into all the effigies. Indiana was more like Ohio with the geometric forms and the mounds, but they're all in the stonework from the Adena and the Hopewell people. It's just all fascinating stuff. And we now know that Native people built these, but one of the problems is that I'll maybe throw it to Hugh if we have time here, is that the lost race theory, when the white settlers showed up, there was such, the Native peoples unfortunately were just decimated by disease, much more disorganized than they had been in the past, and basically a lot of these cities like Cahokia were abandoned. So they came in and they thought, like the Greeks or Europeans built all the mounds. And frankly, all the giant skeletons that were reported got thrown in with that lost race theory, like it's an extravagant, controversial theory that's really not true. So the Smithsonian and John Wesley Powell came in and really shut the door on that idea, ignoring all the giant skeleton reports. Now, we're not claiming that non-Native people built the mounds. Clearly they did. Native American peoples, Adena, Hopewell, they built the mounds, Mississippian people, but they had giant rulers, we believe. And that point got thrown out. And it's like, hey, Wesley Powell, read your freaking own Smithsonian reports. You have like 17 7-foot and tall skeletons, up to 8 foot tall, 36-inch skulls, jawbones fitting over the face, double rows of teeth, all these kinds of things right in your own reports. Giant artifacts. That's another thing we cover in the book. Worn giant axes. What does that mean? Is it ceremonial? Who's wearing it out,
Yeah,
so,
right.
Sorry about the rant, but you know what I'm saying.
But it's true. Who's picking it up? It ain't me. I'm 6 foot tall and I'm not big enough. And you're absolutely right. I wanted to ask you guys about dolmens in general. There's not. I'm fascinated with all of the not only what appears to be ceremonial, but stuff that possibly people lived in too. I don't know, with the round holes, with the enclosed ones. But then you have the dolmens around the world that have a roof, that have these megalithic pillars supporting these, and they seem to be cross culture. But yet they're similar. And why isn't there a lot of investigation and knowledge about it? Everybody just says, well, they're there. We don't know.
Yeah, I can tackle that one if you like. Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of research on dolmens around the world actually, and seen them in various different countries. I mean, I think a few facts might blow people's minds. Like, for instance, in Korea, north and south, there's 19,000 recorded dolmens.
Right.
They're found throughout the Bible lands, where all the giant and the Nephilim and the Rephaim and all the giant races existed. They're found up in Russia, Georgia. They're all over the Far East. I've seen examples with my own eyes in Colombia, southern Colombia. And so you just get to a point, and North America, obviously. So you get to a point where you just think that what's going on here? I mean, like you said, can they really be built by the same people? But I think one of the weird things about them is, which people don't clock normally, is the fact that they're often related to giants, giant legends and giant stories and things like this. If they're not related to giants, they're related to ancient gods who arrived and built them and then left again 20 years later or so. So you get these different stories. But you do find remarkable similarities around the world, and although some of them were covered with a mound, which you do find a lot of examples that were, and so then it was like a chamber within, which is the kind of thing you find obviously in America in the mound culture areas, and in New England as well, in parts of New York State, and so but some of them were clearly open, and they were like what you said, they had a roof and they had uprights, but one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that they're like machines. They're designed to generate and harness natural earth energies that are present at the site, like underneath it. Like, for example, North Salem Dolmen, the one in New York State, is actually built upon a major negative magnetic anomaly. There's also a fault line, not a very strong one, but going along directly underneath the dolmen. You also have, as I mentioned earlier, the piezoelectric effect, where you have crystalline rock, the sheer weight of it crushing down on other rocks. So you have this energetic charge, and often they have underground water and natural telluric currents congregating within them. And so, you have to kind of question that. And this is all being tested now scientifically by a team, John Burke and Kaj Halberg. You may know their work. Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty is their book, came out in 2005. And they actually put seeds in here because there's lots and lots of legends. When you place seeds and grains inside one of these chambers or dolmens, leave it for an hour or two, then go and plant them. It does something to the seeds and the grains, charges them up. And then when you plant it, you get a much higher yield, sometimes a 300% increase in yield. And so you have to kind of question, this was like a fertility technology that was known about and passed around different cultures. And to me, it proves diffusionism was really taking place and people were traveling around the world. And I'm absolutely sure now that through this research I've been doing with Jim and Ross, is that giants were involved, and they were part of this elite network who had this knowledge. And as Jim mentioned, they were like a royal bloodline. They were like an elite who were very called great people. They were like great people. They were like proper leaders and rulers who actually looked out for their tribes. And so I think that was part of the secrets of the elite, and this was passed around the world, and it helped the cultures that worked with this knowledge.
Have you been to Iraq in Karnak? In France?
Yes, I have been to Karnak, yes, and in France, you mean that Karnak, yes.
Yeah, that dolmen there is one, well, aside from the ones in Russia, which I think, I don't want to sound juvenile, but they look the coolest. They have a cool vibe going on there. But Iraq in Karnak, how big is that? How big are those, the cross, the roof pillars that are going across for the roof on that dolmen? It looks absolutely enormous and impossible to build.
There are some bit. Yeah, I've been to that one. Yes, they are ridiculously big. In Karnak is one of the weirdest places. Being a true megalithomaniac, I've travelled to as many places as I can. They have the biggest stones you can find, and Karnak is just like everything is about twice or three times bigger than everywhere else, and it's mind bending when you go there. You cannot understand how they could do that, and that dolmen is one example. Yeah. But they had menhirs that were like three times higher than anything known in the world. So it's an incredible place, that place, and they have found very robust and large skeletons, as Jim's been researching as well, in France, and so that does kind of you do find the giant connections with those two. So, but I think the size of some of those are just outrageous, and we have to question if it wasn't giant builders building it, then how on earth did they do it?
Well, before I get to Jim about the giant and the skeletons question, just say ridiculously for me one more time.
Ridiculously.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just
making him say that.
So, and so when we're dealing with dolmens and these enormous structures like this that obviously weigh tons and tons and tons, are we finding evidence of giant skeletons at each one, or are some of these not burial sites at all?
So some of them, yeah. There have been a few examples. Jim can jump in in just a moment, but yeah, there have been some examples where they have found quite large bones at some of them. Even in Britain, there are a few examples. I don't have the details off the top of my head, but they are. But often it's just that the amount of legends associated with them is quite compelling. Anyway, Jim, you jump in there.
Well, Fort Knox in Ireland.
Yes, amazing.
That site, yeah. There's a report from 1950. Remember I sent it to you? I think it's like 3 over 7 foot skeletons.
Yes, I'm looking at it here.
There are some, certainly. I have a number of reports where a dolmen was opened up and there was found to be an enormous skeleton there. There are giant skeleton reports all around Stonehenge, actually, that we have. I just think... the question is, are these structures, built when we think they were built, or are they basically left over from an earlier time? I think, my favorite, not favorite, because, I have a real love for different sites around the world that I just feel are so cool, but the Great Pyramid of Egypt is ground zero to, I believe, an earth grid, frankly. Just like acupuncture meridians are run around the body, the Earth has a grid pattern, and there's no question, and Hugh knows this better than anyone, that the sites are lined up along these lines, along ley lines, electromagnetic lines of force. I just think the Great Pyramid is ground zero for so much. I'm sure your audience, reading Graham Hancock's stuff or watching Revelation of the Pyramids and things like that, understands just how ridiculous it is to attribute the building of the Great Pyramid to Egyptians in 2750 BC. I am a firm believer it's more like 8,000 or 10,000 years old. Robert Shaw could probably agree with that with the Sphinx, and Anthony West probably thinks it's older. But I just really think on the planet there was a sophisticated civilization that predates a lot of these civilizations that are purported to build these structures. The largest and most sophisticated stonework on the planet is often the oldest. The Trilithon at Baalbek, Ollantaytambo, and on and on and on. You get these sites that, as a stonemason, it just makes my head spin. Yeah, maybe you could do that, probably not, but maybe if you marshal all the resources of your society, but all around the globe, Easter Island, isolated spots, they're all, in ancient times, building the most ridiculous accomplishments with tools they don't possess to measure that they need to measure the incredible accuracy which they built with. You know what I mean? It really the whole thing just boggles my mind, and I really think the only logical thing is more like there was a lost civilization, and I think places like Göbekli Tepe are proving that hey, it would be unthinkable, not too long ago to say there's a 12,000-year-old temple site that's that sophisticated.
Well, yeah. Now, let me warn you guys really quick that Göbekli Tepe is something that is discussed extensively every night on this show, and it has been for years. But our audience does a drinking game because I say Göbekli Tepe so much. And so now you guys are responsible for about a half a dozen DUIs already tonight.
I talked to an anthropologist. I'm just going to go sidetrack for a minute. There were so many similarities of pyramids, of building styles around the world. Skull elongation all around the globe in cultures that were not connected. Right. That is the most ridiculous and extreme activity. Right. I don't know what they're emulating. To just tell me with a straight face it's the 100 monkey thing, or they just like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Why?
Yes. Yes.
It's insane to freaking cradleboard your kid, but everybody's doing it in all these cultures that were never supposed to have any contact. It's just that alone should be like this mind-boggling mystery. Instead, it's just swept aside like, you're crazy if you bring it up,
Well, you brought up a point, though, Jim. When you look at Ground Zero, the Great Pyramid, what is the evidence of that thing being really old? Well, how about in the last 2,000 years, it hasn't changed a bit, and it's still standing. So how old do you think it honestly is? It probably looked the same at 2700 BC when it was supposedly built, because it was already sitting there. So when we go to 10,000 years, I don't even think that is that much of a stretch. How about 100?
I think 10,000 BC. I'm kind of an Edgar Casey guy.
Yes.
That I just really his stuff resonates with me. I really, he had an 8th grade education, and he's talking, and he in fact in the book we talk about it. Casey had 68 readings on the mound builders, and Greg Little, his wife, and John Van Auken have this great book, Mound Builders, Edgar Casey's Forgotten Legacy. And basically, Casey nails so much, like where haplogroup X is found all around the planet. He is so consistently accurate with so much of his stuff. And he talked about giant people existing in Atlantis, giant mound builders in Florida, just really this interesting stuff out of left field, this psychic who's talking about healing people for years starts talking about Atlantis and the mound builders and past lives in a trance state. And, I really, his stuff resonates with me. I really think that the Giza Plateau was put together in like 10,000 BC. And the only, it would have to be built in 20 years to be Cheops Pyramid, essentially, like the Egyptologists tell us. Howard Weiss in the 1800s was a crooked English archaeologist who wanted more funding, and he wrote that stupid cartouche that was like upside down and all messed up. There was like Zawi Hawass is like a really an arrogant, closed-minded donkey who should be fired, and I'm sure Graham Hancock could, go on all day about how the Great Pyramid was not built in 2750 BC, but I don't believe so. I believe it was built in 10,000 BC, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, even in England, we have like the area around Stonehenge now. These wooden post holes they've discovered. They found this new mega henge underneath the ground with ground penetrating radar, and a settlement near Stonehenge, which all date back to 10,000, 11,000 years ago. So it's kind of contemporary with with Göbekli Tepe and other sites. So the fact we're finding it at major sites now, we've got Göbekli Tepe, we've got definite carbon dating now in around the Stonehenge area and other parts of Britain. Even in Portugal, in certain parts of Portugal, in the Évora area, you do find extremely ancient dating of some of the stone circles there. And so the evidence is now coming forth, but I think it's partly because of Göbekli Tepe, that's like the smoking gun that is actually enabled, because it's been the fact that it's been carbon dated accurately by German archaeologists. Mm-hmm. You can't deny it. It's a fact. You can't deny it. So it's there. So that's like the kind of the smoking gun. It's like where everything is now going to be based around. And I think with Schock's work on the Sphinx, obviously, I think that makes a lot of sense now. It kind of all fits in. But there's evidence now coming out because Göbekli Tepe has opened that door, and it's about time. And it's just amazing that it's actually happening. And like everything Hancock and Schock and others were saying 20 years ago is now being verified by carbon dating and archaeologists.
Lisa wants to know in Twitter, Hugh, what part of England are you from?
I'm from Cambridge, actually just near Cambridge, but I live in Glastonbury now.
See, that's why he sounds so smart, Jim.
It's funny because Hugh's on the show, and Hugh's always coming off as a smart guy, and my producers are laughing like you could say anything and it sounds smart to the American audience.
It's
I know. He's a real charmer, I know.
I love it when I have somebody from the UK on the show. It just makes this, doofus American look pretty good. So I wanted to ask you both the obvious question. When we look at dolmens from around the world, and I haven't visited, dolmens on every continent like you guys have, but What are the similarities? And do you just step back and go, look, this comes from one mindset? There's too many similarities here. What have you found with that?
I could just give you a quick outline on that. Yes, you do find the similarity. I mean, Jim and I have, briefly mentioned that already, but the similarities become kind of bizarre after a while. It's to me, I've kind of gotten numb to it now. I kind of just see it everywhere. I see the same things. I see the polygonal walls in Peru and Egypt and Italy and other places.
Right.
You see the dolmens that are almost identical all around the world. You find examples of stone circle technology. You find relief carvings, the same at Göbekli Tepe as you do in Peru. The list goes on. You get the mounds in North America, you get the mounds in Britain, almost exactly the same. But yeah, the dolmens, I think, are one of those things that I think were probably one of the easiest constructions to make, as long as it's not too big, which you would get results from if you were looking for results, if you were looking for this energy system to like enhance your seeds and your grains in an agricultural society. I mean, now we just take food for granted, but back then didn't take it for granted. You had to find your water, you had to find your food, you had to grow your food and protect it and serve your families and things like this. And it's a very, very different world we live in now. So I think dolmen, that got passed around through this elite, through these different cultures, and it spread. And I think and they last for so long that they're really hard to destroy, dolmens and any megalithic or mound site. So I think that they got used for multiple generations over a very, very long period of time.
And how about you, Jim? You're a stone guy. When you look at some of these dolmen sites, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, I'll quickly say that Hugh made a good point. In England you have henges, like earthen circular enclosures with openings, even around Stonehenge. You have so many similarities between mound sites in England and Europe and in the United States, and there's never a question raised, well, there was no connection. Either these people came from one continent and spread out, or they were in contact with each other. And, dolmen, stone sites, it's the same thing. It's a remarkable consistency all around the planet. You just can't have it both ways. Well, maybe they're not built in 10,000 BC by a civilization we're not too well acquainted with, but certainly there are so many similarities in not just building techniques, in symbolism, petroglyphs, spiritual belief systems, even the way skeletons were buried and seating postures facing the east, that there's something going on. There's another story. You are not crazy if you believe that the narrative is inaccurate in some way. It's hidden in plain sight all around the planet. And I think you talk to stonemasons and engineers and architects, you're going to get a much different story. Like Robert Schoch would say, well, virtually every geologist agrees with me that this is water weathering on the Sphinx, and it's at least 8,000 years old, where almost probably every archaeologist and Egyptologist is going to disagree with them, although they're jumping out of their field. It's like me waking up on the operating table and telling the doctor he's taking out the wrong organ, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it is absurd. It's almost comical. But people are dug in. I just really believe this different story hidden in plain sight. And to your viewers, just don't feel like, there's a lot to hang your hat on, from Göbekli Tepe to skull elongation to consistent architectural patterns all around the world with these sites. Like, Hugh said, thousands of dolmens in North and South Korea, something like that. It's like, wow, that's astonishing, all around the world, like you said, in Russia. So the similarity is striking, and you become numb to it, but I think it just strengthens the argument that there is a different story here. And I agree with Graham Hancock that we're a species with amnesia.
Quickly.
What happened 12,000 years ago, right? Well, why do we all have PTSD? Why can't we talk about these things, and investigate them?
Well, yeah. That amnesia happens in a couple of dozen years, and so if you think about it, and I'm not making light of this. If you think about it, anything that we want to point at, we don't have answers for. The native civilizations that are there, the indigenous groups, don't have the answers for the stuff that is in their very backyard. Look at Pumapunku. That's an example. Look at Giza. If you look at Bolivia and Peru, these examples of these enormous megalithic. Look at Baalbek in Lebanon. Don't know anything about it, and it's right there.
Right?
You know,
the Trilithon, a couple 2 million pound stones, 30, 40 feet in the air. To just, to brush that aside like the Romans built it or the Phoenicians or whatever, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And our man, Brian Forrester, he really makes some great points and investigations about, you have Olmec and Inca cultures that appear to be doing kind of subpar stonework on top or next to some of the most brilliant ancient stonework. And it really seems like a lot of the stonework down in Peru is pre-Incan, pre-Olmec, and Mexico all down south. And Hugh is well acquainted with that. You see that, and you're like, wait a second, that doesn't look, that looks like they're trying to emulate what was already there when they landed there, and they're falling far short.
Yeah, and when somebody asked me about the amnesia question, we can talk about the Mayan culture, we can talk about the Aztecs, we can talk about the Incas, but also one of the clearest examples to me in sort of modern history is Cleopatra and Egypt. When all of that ended, right then, immediately, just 100 years later, nobody can read hieroglyphics. Nobody knows anything about the architecture there. Nobody, and when the Persians showed up, or when anybody else showed up in Egypt, and they point at the pyramids and they say, what are those? I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yes.
And when the explorers showed up in the United States, a lot of native tribes didn't know who built the mounds.
No, nobody knew who built the mounds. Nobody knows how Machu Picchu, whatever, you can point at any, the amnesia sets in immediately. The Spanish came, the issues happened with the Mayans, and whatever you want to point at here in Central and South America, but suddenly the culture was erased and everything was forgotten. The amnesia set in immediately. We almost know nothing about the Mayan culture. We almost know nothing about the Incan culture. It's fascinating.
The lunatics burned all the Mayan codices. All the conservative or the zealous Christian monks. Destroyed everything. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we had to go back and decipher because everybody, nobody knew how to read it anymore. You know what I mean?
I guarantee you, in the Library of Alexandria, there was volumes about Atlantis, and now it's considered a ridiculous fantasy. And if that library was still up and kicking, you wouldn't believe what was in there.
Well, which brings me to, and we'll talk about Göbekli Tepe after the break. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe, as significant as it is, and it should be, headline news on CNN every single day, but it's not. But there's going to be another Göbekli Tepe discovered, whether it is in, Syria, Iraq, Turkey, Armenia, but it could be in Siberia. It could be right here in North America. It could be somewhere in Asia. But there's going to be something else discovered that is tens of thousands of years old. It's going to get carbon dated. There's going to be objects there. And then somebody in history has got some explaining to do. And that's me. And right now they're avoiding Göbekli Tepe like the plague. You remember what happened with Zahi Hawass and Graham Hancock. That's one of the most brilliant telling videos ever. Zahi Hawass, when Graham asked him, well, what about Göbekli Tepe? And Zahi comes back with, I know nothing. What are you talking? I don't know what you're talking about. Right? That's exactly what we're dealing with.
I think, well, if we're going to the break, Hugh, you want to ask Hugh about Danny Hillman and Graham Hancock and the site in Indonesia that they're working on right now?
Yeah, let's do that when we come back off of the break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. And I'm having a great time, and I know you are too. More with the both when we come back. Stay with us.
Alpha the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony. Damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight we have guests Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira with us. Giants and megaliths all night long here on Fade to Black. Want to remind you that tomorrow night we have Seth Shostak here from SETI and John Ventry with his new report on Kecksburg. That is tomorrow night. Let's go back to Hugh and Jim. Hugh, I just sent you the wrong link. I meant to send you the link for the Petrolona man, the 700,000-year-old skull. Are you guys hip to that?
Yeah, from Greece, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
1950.
Yeah, that's a very cool story. Very interesting. If true, it really takes the out of Africa theory behind the woodshed. You know.
That's a crazy-looking skull too. What's the word I want to use? Gnarly? Is that a good word?
Gnarly is a good word. Yeah, like a burl on a tree or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it seemed to get. There seems to be somewhat of a lack of transparency around the whole thing. That's what I don't like. It's not, there should be more thoroughly investigated. Is my take.
Now, before we get to Gobekli Tepe, the question of the night for Twitter before we kicked off the show, I got to hit you guys both with this. Van Halen or Van Hagar? Hugh, you first.
Oh, Van Halen.
That's what I'm talking about. Jim?
Oh, totally Van Halen. Yeah. I mean, come on.
That's it.
I used to have this huge boombox and I'd crank Van Halen. They weren't much for lyrics, but David Lee Roth was a good frontman, and they were awesome, man.
That's it. That's the beauty of this show, guys. We can do megaliths and rock and roll in the same show. How cool is that, right? Right?
Well, the Dodgers just won, so are you happy the Dodgers beat the Mets? I don't know if you're a Dodgers fan out in L.A.
Yeah, years ago, I used to work for Vin, and it was pretty interesting. Yeah, Vin Scully. And so I wasn't really a big Dodgers guy until I started hanging out with Vin. And then I would start imitating him. And the funny thing was, I was going to broadcasting school at the time for radio.
and everybody at school wanted to be like a sportscaster, so we would sit around and imitate Vin Scully. And so I'd be around Vin, and I would talk to him in Vin talk. The Dodgers, and I would. Anyway, we can't go there. Let's not go into sports. I would love to.
No, I don't.
I would love to. I would love to, though. But where was I? Oh, yeah, back to Göbekli Tepe. So this is what I find interesting. Is and your comments immediately will follow. Göbekli Tepe simply wasn't supposed to exist, and we have that 5,000 or 7,000 year gap that lies between Sumerian culture, Egypt, and then what happened at 10,000 BC, right at the edge of the Ice Age with Göbekli Tepe. And the point that I want to make here is, as impossible as it was with the stone tools and the copper chisels for Giza to be created, that's one issue that we're wrapping our minds around today. But if you back up to Göbekli Tepe, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years before Giza, and we're looking at those stone pillars, the T-pillars, and we're looking at the 3D sculpture, the artistic things that are happening there. How is it possible for that to have been built by a culture that was certainly really Stone Age?
That's a good question there. That is one of the things that gets me, because you look at the stuff at Göbekli Tepe. I mean, they've just opened the museum in Sanliurfa. So everything that was ever found at Göbekli Tepe and at Navali Churi and at other sites in the area are now all on display there. Literally everything. They've even got a reconstruction of enclosure D, I think, and so you can actually see the size of these things. They're like incredible, 18, 20 feet tall. They're incredible. It's an incredible place, and all these sculptures that are now on display in the museum. I was there just in September. I was there with Andrew Collins and a group. We take groups over there twice a year to go and investigate. Andrew Collins is obviously the kind of one of the main men on it. He's been researching it for that area for over 20 years before even Göbekli was discovered. But it's so convincing that it was a very advanced culture. You can't deny that. You know what I mean? So therefore, then you have to question who on earth and how on earth did they do that? Because it's too sophisticated to come out of nowhere. Unless these guys were just taking hideous amounts of mushrooms, or they were highly inspired, or whatever they were doing, they did something that was special, and it was like a breakthrough in society, in culture, breaking away from the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And if you think about it, we've got to remember, it was only 12,000 years ago, and the human timeline, or the Earth's timeline, is not that long. And so the brain structure, the bodies, the minds were no different to us, really. So you can see it was possible. If we got transported back then, you could construct something like that. You could do it. Just about. The other problem there is that there's not just one or two enclosures or stone circles. There's like potentially 50. Between 30 and 50 of them. It's insane. That's what Klaus Schmidt was saying before he died. And he couldn't believe it, the amount there is there. And they're all built on top of each other at different eras. So it was used for several thousand years, at least 2,500 years. And then it was reburied, which is another millions of tons of rubble, and reconstructing the site and burying it. It's an incredible achievement. I mean, the best solution about where they came from, I think, is in the work that Andrew Collins put together in his book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods.
Right.
And he thinks it was something to do with the Swiderians who came from the north, because there is evidence going further back that they were doing just similar, not the same, but similar kind of relief carvings in caves and on mountainsides and things like that. So there are suggestions that could be the thing, but it could be something completely an origin we just don't know about. So yeah, I think the jury's still out on that one.
Jim, you're a stone guy. When you're thinking about 10,000 BC. how did they possibly carve and quarry and move those rocks at Göbekli Tepe?
Well, it would require a formed and sophisticated culture. I think, the conventional theory is probably leaning more towards like Neo-Paleolithic hunters hunting big game and camping at the site or whatever, but that doesn't make any sense.
No.
You're talking about, it's not just 12,000 years ago. You're talking 14, 15, 16,000 years ago that a culture existed on the planet that was highly sophisticated. This isn't, as Graham Hancock would say, they showed up out of the blue. They built the temple. It all came to them. This had this culture that created this unbelievable monument had to have formed over a large amount of time with organizational skills and the ability to feed all the people and the ability to, work with stone and be precise and artistic and creative. And as far as the actual nuts and bolts of carrying it out, I'm going to have to wait 15, 20 years to answer that until more and more gets dug at the site, honestly. I have some theories. I believe there's another story than what conventional archaeology would tell us. I just think there are more secrets buried that have to be unearthed there. And just as it stands, though, like you said, mind-numbing, 18 and 20-foot tall pillars and circle after circle, up to 50 of these. And then it was buried. I don't know, man. I work with stone every day. I've probably dealt with and handled over 1 million pounds of stone in my hands easily in my life. And I got a herniated disc to prove it. But it's a real, just such a time-consuming, difficult activity that draws you away from all you have to do to survive, essentially. It's like a luxury item. And so you have to get a bunch of people well-fed and to do such an amazing work of art and ceremony. So I am very anxious to see what comes out of Göbekli Tepe in the 10 more years. Actually, could I throw a softball over to Hugh and ask about what you know about the site in Indonesia?
Hugh, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, again, I went out there with Andrew Collins back in March this year, and we looked at Gunung Padang and some other sites in the area. I think maybe Robert Schock and Graham Hancock maybe have talked to you about this before, Jimmy.
Yes.
And that's another one of those sites. It doesn't make sense. It's come out of nowhere, and it's very strange. It's like a translation of the name is like Mountain of Light or Light Mountain, and that really is. It just doesn't make any sense. And Danny Hillman, who's been doing the research there, who's tunneled down, he's got carbon dating going back beyond 10,000 BC, potentially up to 20,000, but this is not being 100% confirmed yet.
Right.
And some of the authorities there are trying to close him down as well. So it's a real problem. I mean, Danny's going to be presenting his latest research with Jim and I in London on November the 7th at the Origins Conference. So I'm eager to hear what Danny's got to say, because I think he's got some updates that I haven't heard yet. In fact, I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow because I'm going to be testing his Skype, because he's going to be Skyping in for the conference. But I think, what they're finding there, the fact that they're finding it in different parts of the world now, almost on every continent, they're finding examples of this, is really lifting the lid off what was really going on in prehistory. Hancock covers it in his new book, Magicians of the Gods, quite thoroughly, in fact. Goes really into the whole Sunderland culture in that area, which some people believe maybe Atlantis may have been misrepresented, and it was actually from that area. It wasn't in the Atlantic or the Americas or anything. So there's a big debate about that. But yeah, you got semi-megalithic stuff. They're no more than a ton, these columns that make up the site. But there's a lot of magnetic anomalies there and fault lines and energies that Danny Hillman, being a geologist, has tested, and he actually showed me where all of them were. And I videoed the whole thing, so I'm going to produce a few YouTube videos on our Megalithomania YouTube thing about that, because I don't think anyone's done that before. And I think, kudos to him. He's getting a lot of flack. Like, we're no doubt going to get when our book comes out tomorrow. And so he's taking it on, and he just doesn't care, and he's just full steam ahead. And I respect him for his brilliant work.
Well, what's interesting is when you look at Gadam Patang and you think about Göbekli Tepe. Well, I've heard dates thrown around with Padang 25,000 years, and but just what I picture in my mind is today. What would we be doing today to build Göbekli Tepe or Gadang? We would have huge cranes, huge earth movers, huge graders, bulldozers, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people involved, engineers, architectural drafts, studies, to something that we probably couldn't even do anyway. And could you imagine?
No, that's a good point. I'm sorry. I think I've been ignoring your question because the globe is littered with these sites, and we've made the same case like a million times. Like, you know, you get the Great Pyramid and the polishing of the stone, the working with granite. It's no question that they couldn't do it with just copper tools. And, yeah, you're talking about engineering and knowledge of geometry. That's a very good point. It's not just like, oh, these people got together and they carved some stones 12,000 years ago. It's like you're talking about highly sophisticated culture and with a grasp of geometry and engineering, mathematics, and obviously the ability to feed the population too. No, that's a very good point. And yeah, it's true. You know, I would say that the next revolution in archaeology is going to be underneath the ocean. You know, the lost cities walk off the coast of India, where Krishna lived. It goes back at least 8,000 years ago, maybe more. You know, I haven't been able to dive on Yanaguni off the coast of Japan yet. I can't proclaim it's man-made or natural, but it's very intriguing. I think there are sites buried, under the ocean waters that are well over 10,000 years old, and at some point they will be found. And if your listeners are motivated to find the next great archaeological oddity, I would search beneath the ocean waters.
Well, you know, Jim, you're a stonemason, and when you look at Giza and you know, the claims of copper chisels and stone, when you look at that and you're dealing with 2.5 million,
infantile. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous.
Right. Well,
ridiculous.
If you have 2.5,
no, really, it's like I wish I had an analogy. It's moronic, and for somebody to say with a straight face, you're out of your mind, man. It's like, what do you want, acid? It is so ridiculous.
Well,
I don't like. Help me with an analogy. It's just like it is. There is no way. There was a 0% chance it was done in the fashion. I mean, freaking zero. Not like 0.1, 0.
Right.
And something else took place.
Well, if we're talking about copper chisels and 2.5 million rocks, aren't there 5 million used copper chisels sitting around somewhere in Giza, piled up in a
Yeah, where are they?
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Oh no, it's just, yeah, it's funny. Like my friend owns $1 million like saw shop. We have some like the greatest quarries in North America right in my town here in Ashfield, and the town next to my in Goshen, and all these cuts that you see at the quarries with these huge diamond saws. You see them all over the Giza Plateau. They're kind of obscurely hidden here and there. You're like, oh my God, there was a large scale machining operation here, you know, and it's hidden in plain sight. And you have that donkey walking around, you know, the supreme ruler of antiquities or whatever his self-aggrandizing, you know, name is. It just, I don't know, man. It seems like an 8th grade debate or something, like this real sophomoric, infantile thing where you just can't have an open debate about the most great, you know, unbelievable and enigmatic structure on the planet. You know, you're just getting fed nonsense. It's not like, oh, that's a good point. It's like you cannot make that point with a straight face over and over again. And we're the crazy ones. It's just like, it's like I'm taking crazy pills. Sorry.
Well, just to make it a bit more crazy. I mean, I'm getting more and more convinced, and you know that these sites, these giants we've been researching in North America, Jim and I and others have found reports all over the world, close to where these megaliths are. So why not throw it in there that, actually this giant elite, whoever they were involved as well. And I don't think it was just their muscular strength. I think they had special powers and techniques that we don't know about anymore, that they could move and cut these stones. And so I think, we've got to I think that is something that needs to be addressed. I know it sort of sounds weird. It sounds a bit ridiculousness, but you've got to take that on as a possibility. I'm not saying that's the solution of how they built the pyramids, but I think that's one aspect of it, which could answer a lot of things about a lot of megalithic and mound sites around the world.
Well,
it's a good point. Increased cranial capacity, intellect, and I think we're stumbling around in the dark here. I think spirituality and science have taken our polar opposites now. There's not that diffusion of both. The shaman with all the knowledge is like an outcast in our society. It's like hard science or somebody who's really invested in religion, and they fight with each other. But when you blend science and spirituality, when you come from a holographic approach and tap into, the flow of whatever all there is, something cool happens. And I think that's what ancient cultures were all about. And our friend Ross Hamilton hits on that all the time. And Hugh understands it too, that there are forces that can be manipulated for the good of societies, for peace, benevolence, crop production, construction of megalithic sites, of massive sites. And that's not some hocus pocus or some wishful thinking. That is a reality, I believe. And it happened in the past. And, we're asleep at the wheel. Our culture is like out to lunch, man. Endless wars and $17 trillion worth of debt and no reverence. Just think of native civilizations in our country went back at least 14,000 years and were stewards of the land the entire time,
right,
even though they had sprawling civilizations. And we've paved over and poisoned North America in about 400 years, and it's just something is very, very wrong with our culture, with the way it's collectively put together and the way it dehumanizes people. And that really has to be looked at. What did the ancient peoples have right when they communally would get together and build structures over hundreds of years and have everyone involved and be proud of it? And it wasn't like slave societies. We're talking about, especially in the Americas and the native civilizations, they would do these things for the sake of reverence and basically as tools of enlightenment, as earth machines that would bring you to a more advanced state of consciousness. That was happening.
Yeah,
and we don't have that.
Right.
We have gladiator balls where everybody gets together and screams and watches TV and stuff. So something is wrong, and that's why Hugh and I investigate the past.
Well,
I would say one of the main reasons.
Yeah, they didn't build it because it looked cool. Okay,
Correct.
There was a whole other meaning behind it, and there was something I wanted to touch upon. When we're talking about manpower and organization, because you had to have somebody quarry, you had to have somebody card, you have to have a stonemason, engineers, architects, farmers, cooks, and the other things that were in place for the logistics of it. You have that. But there's one point that Egyptologists bury their head in the sand literally about, which is we're talking about a 100 to 200 year span in Egypt where they built the Bent Pyramid, the Step Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, and another 50 that were maybe not quite as big as the Great Pyramid, but certainly took the same amount of labor to get it done. Where did this labor force come from? How were they going from the Red Pyramid? Snefru, he must have been incredible, moving an army of people from site to site. Where were these millions of Egyptians living? Where did they come from to build all of these pyramids in just a micro, and to cap it off with the Great Pyramid? I just don't understand where this, unless it spanned tens of thousands of years. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down?
Yes, the timeline's messed up, is what I'll say. And Hugh, I guess there's no question the timeline is messed up.
Hugh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, as your listeners are probably aware, the more sophisticated stuff in Egypt and other countries is the oldest stuff. It's the most well carved. It's the biggest, and it's clearly the oldest. And this was like the sort of time of the gods. It was a time of the giants, in my opinion. It was like a different world we lived in. I mean, we're looking at dates that, as Jim points out, like Atlantean times, but it's also times around when some of the times actually before the so-called cataclysm happened, the Younger Dryas and things like this, where there was more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that would affect our hormones, that would affect our brain power, that would affect our size. This is what we look at in the book. We look at different theories about how cataclysm changed the atmosphere and it affected us, and we look at native oral traditions that say that. I mean, I think people overlook the fact that in North America, not just at Göbekli Tepe in Peru and Egypt and places like that, but there was a thriving, very advanced culture going back at least 12,000 years or more. And some of them were giants, and they had a very advanced way of looking after their people, their land, and they did build sites. There's one example of a mound site, strangely, in California, that goes back to that was originally carbon dated 22,000 years old, which not many people know about that. We cover that in the book, and so there's a lot more going on. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's even humans, modern style human sort of Cro-Magnon style skulls found in America, going back, over 100,000 years. There's famous ones like the Perique woman, the Penon woman in Mexico. That's 13,000 years old. There's other examples. There's obviously Kennewick Man. You have the Spirit Cave mummies, and the Lovelock Cave mummies, and also the bog mummies down in Florida, which are 8 and 9, 10,000 years old. They had technology. They were making really sophisticated craft objects, and so we're looking at all around the world. This was going on. There was this sort of unknown sort of. It's not that long ago, and the amnesia that's been caused since then. That's what makes it so compelling. We want to know where we came from. We want to know who we are, and we want to kind of have a grasp on it. And hence, that's why the giants are so interesting. That's why trying to get to the bottom of who built these megalithic sites. There's so much that is unanswered, and there seems to be this sort of just kind of almost like a spell has been put on it, which is now starting to be broken. So I think we're just we're in the early stages of just trying to work out what was going on.
Hey guys, we're going to be up against a break, and can I get you to hang on for another 10 minutes? I want to ask you about 2 more sites.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that cool with you, Jim?
Well, Linus the Cat is here, as you will be happy to know, but he'll allow me 10 more minutes, definitely.
You got it. Let's do it. Let's take our last break. When I come back, I want to talk a little bit about Bolivia and Peru. We for some reason we didn't get there tonight, and then I want to throw it back to Hugh. I want to talk about Newgrange over in Ireland, too, as well. One of my favorite sites. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira, all night. It's a megalith and giant kind of evening here on Fade to Black. I'll be back right after this. You stay right there.
Listen to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter. But
listening to Jimmy Church will.
All right, you Fadernauts. Studio Dome has done it once again. A new Studio Dome Fadernaut special. Introducing the Studio Dome Boom Box Bluetooth speaker. It's got a rear-firing bass film subwoofer and dual 52mm main speakers. You'll never listen to your tablet or cell phone speakers again. Just click on the Studio Dome banner, use the promo code Jimmy, and you'll get the SBB for $49 and free shipping. And get a Buddy 4-port USB charger for free. That's a $19.99 value right there. And they'll throw in a Buddy in the box. It's the best deal on the net anywhere. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner, enter the promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira, Giants and Megaliths. Tomorrow night, Seth Shostak from SETI will be here, John Ventry, and his new report on Kecksburg. But right now, it's about Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Hey, Hugh, before I let you go, I need your comments on Newgrange because first, I'm going to say this really quick. Number one of the most beautiful sights on planet Earth, period, bar none. Two, old as the hills. We don't really know how old or what, when, where, and why. Jim brought up amnesia earlier. One of the best examples of all of everything that we're talking about is Newgrange. We know almost nothing, but there it is, and it is majestic and beautiful and nearly perfect.
Newgrange is one of the most impressive sites in the world, really. I mean, it's in this whole area called the Boyne Valley, not too far from Dublin. And you have, and these are like great earth mounds originally with these huge chambers inside of them. Newgrange has been reconstructed partly. It's aligned to the winter solstice sunrise. It's perfectly aligned. It also has a Venus alignment, which was discovered a while back. Mm-hmm. And there's a brilliant researcher out there called Anthony Murphy. And if people want to check him out, he does a website called mythicalisland.com. And he's got all the research on it. He's like a brilliant archaeoastronomer and researcher and writer. He's written a few books about it. And he's been uncovering all the legends out there as well, which has put a whole new light on it. But yeah, that whole area there is what some of the most ancient places in Britain as well. Some of it goes back to about 6,000 BC. Some parts of it do, and so in that general area. And of course, you have fornocks there as well, where there used to be mounds surrounding fornocks, which is another megalithic mound and chamber, megalithic construction with this beautiful carving on it. But in those mounds nearby, that's where they found, as Jim mentioned earlier, they found these giant skeletons. Some of them they say going up to 8 feet or more tall, and so I think one of them was like even 10 feet. And there are other giants that have been discovered out there. So that is one of the places we found giants directly related to the sites there. And so there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye. And Ireland is littered with sites like this. There's a lot more out there than just these ones in the Boyne Valley.
When you approach Newgrange, and again, I haven't been there, but when you approach it, what goes through your mind? I mean, was it religious? We don't know much, but when you approach it, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a religious site as well as it was like a technology. It was kind of like a machine in some ways as well, as astronomy and earth energies, things like that.
Right.
But yeah, I think you get that. There's a place near there called Knowth, Knowth, which is they've all been kind of reconstructed, so you lose a bit of the magic there. But you can imagine it. You can kind of go around the outskirts of it and get the vibe as such. And I think it was very ceremonial, and I think the way personally that the ancients were, I think that this is very Native American as well, is that ceremony and fertility and agriculture and survival and honoring the sky and the landscape was all one thing. Everything was like one kind of lifelong ritual about honoring everything. So I think that you do get a sense of that there. And when you start looking into the legends out there, it's just incredible kind of sagas of kings and gods and beasts and giants and things like this. So it's a pretty kind of magical place still.
And Bolivia. Let's talk about Cusco too as well. When you look at and Jim, I'm going to ask you the same questions. As a stone guy, you look at those walls. And you look at how they're pieced together, and they don't make any sense. It's one thing to just create a bunch of rocks that are the same, blocks that are the same size. Let's get this done. But they go and they build it in that fashion, which also there's, very similar constructions over in Egypt too as well. But when you look at Cusco and you look at parts of Bolivia and Peru and you look at these giant walls, how is that possible? With not only the limited, manpower that you had back then, but the technical side as well.
Not possible. That'd be my answer. Honestly, to even get into for somebody, an archaeologist isn't always looking from a stonemason's perspective. Understandably, they're looking for human remains, organic matter that can be dated, which I understand. Maybe tools and artifacts that were there, but the artifact caches that were found don't match up with the way these things were built. Puma Punku, the towers of Silastani, the sites you're talking about just appear that they were built by a previous culture. And that's what I'd really need, I don't know, a trip in a time machine, with actually seeing it done to convince me otherwise. I really think that there was a more advanced civilization that is responsible, not for all. I think Tikal was built when it was said. A lot of the Mesoamerican pyramids were certainly built between 700 AD and 1100 AD, but there are enigmatic sites like the ones you're talking about, as well as other sites around the world that are the remnants of another civilization with a higher technology, and they were not built with the methods that were available to the people who lived at the time attributed to the construction.
Well, okay, so then I'm going to play devil's advocate here, Jim, and I'm going to tell you what any archaeologist is going to say. You're not giving man enough credit. Does that hold water to you?
No, it doesn't, because we're talking about technology and talk to Christopher Dunn, throw that one at him. You have to have mathematics and planning and like freaking CNC machines to build some of this stuff. It's not about ingenuity or perseverance. It's about technology, and it doesn't exist. It didn't exist in the way, Now, these sites might have been done in some strange, arcane way that we don't understand, where there was stones were melted and reformed, or there are different theories like the walls of Sacsayhuaman. But the point is that, they could have been levitation. We don't know what technologies existed. It doesn't mean, with our advancement, that, what we possess technologically was possessed back then. It could be a different thing and a more, shall we say, less overtly scientific and more holistic or spiritual. So we don't know, but I'm just telling you that the technology, the mathematics, the tools did not exist and were not found to build these things in the context of them being built by the people that were supposed to build them in the time period they were built. It's a reasonable thing to ask. I will just tell you, as a stonemason, there's like a 0% chance that a lot of these sites were built in the way they were said. And it just, there was no credence paid to that opinion. And I just find it just kind of lame.
Well, yeah, that's a good adjective. Well, why build with such irregular shapes? Is it for longevity?
Yes, earthquake proofing. Even every stone in the Great Pyramid is of a different size for that reason. The polygonal fits are for that reason. The interlocking dry lay nature of it. You find them, from Easter Island all across the planet, and the sites that have held up. It is like I don't know exactly, but it seems like a message through time has been sent to us. It has something to do with the precession of the equinoxes. It has something to do with the evolution of consciousness. Edgar Cayce says, once we understand the mathematics of the Great Pyramid, we will understand its true message. A message in a bottle has been sent through time and built in such a way to sustain itself. Clearly, we're a culture with amnesia. The most, hardened skeptic, I would hope, could admit that. And we're walking around in a spell, like Hugh said. So we're being transmitted a message through time, and I'm sure your listeners understand that. That's why they're keyed in here and they're not watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something. They understand that there is a mystery to be unveiled, and there is a different way to look at the nature of reality. And I think our ancestors sent us, threw us a line. And if we want to grab it, we better hurry up.
Yeah, well, that's true. And when you look at, the pyramids in Mexico City, the Sun Pyramid, that took 150 years to build. 150 years. That's on record. We have that, 150 years, and it's physically the same size, but it's not nearly as complex as what went on in Giza. That happened in 20 years, and supposedly, and that's where I have
absolutely. Yes.
That's when I draw
half
issues.
I don't want to be a know-it-all, but it's half the mass of the Great Pyramid, with the base is literally the same. So yeah, you're right. 150 years to build that, and there is something about the Great Pyramid of Egypt that is makes it the most enigmatic site on the planet.
Well, there's there's one part of this puzzle that we haven't mentioned tonight, haven't brought up at all, but certainly there is the intervention off world, and although it's a possibility, but is it something else that either of you subscribe to? Hugh, I know that you've been on Ancient Aliens, I get that, but is it possible that advice could have been there, and that could have been the cross-culture thing all the way through dolmens and everything else that has happened, instead of some transoceanic communication? Could it have been?
It's always a possibility, that thing, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, there's a whole Ancient Aliens thing, but you actually look at several Native American origin stories, creation myths. You do some of them say they came from the stars, and they're quite specific about where they came from and what they were like, and things like this. So that there's some very strange. I've been looking, for this book Giants on Record. I've been really looking into the myths and the legends to try and find some, compelling cases there, and I found things like this. And Ross Hamilton's pointed some out to me. So I think there's something in that. I think that's where we need to look for that evidence to see if it backs up anything about building these sites. But I don't subscribe 100% to the ancient alien theory. I think it's a possibility, but I think we're fully capable as human beings, going back 10, 20,000 years. We could do that still somehow. We just don't know how to do it now. That's the problem.
Exactly.
And Jim,
I would say that you have the argument for a lost civilization is much stronger, anyways. On the surface, like I would say, Graham Hancock could probably say something like that. Like, no, we're talking about like an Atlantis-like civilization that experienced cataclysm that is responsible for this sprawling, series of structures around the globe. But I would say when you go back further, it's like, where did humans come from with the genetic intervention? Those are reasonable questions. Where's the missing link? Clearly, there's something strange about evolution, frankly, on this planet. And where we're at right now, we do have the capability to do certain things that are spectacular as humans, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask. And I study the UFO phenomena. I'm talking redacted documents and talking to ex-military people, not like taking, I saw a UFO over the football field or something, but really digging into the documents I must say that it looks like there's a lot of smoke there. It's not, fairy tales. It really appears that something is going on. I'll tell you that. And it's tough. It's one controversy at a time for me, but I would lean on the side of something definitely be going on in the off-world, if you will.
Well, Jim, you kind of danced on this, but if we go back, and I spoke about this last week on the show extensively, if you go back to that magic point 150,000 years ago, 120,000, 150,000 years ago, where Homo sapien just appeared without any cousins around him to connect him to anything else, any other bipedal anything. We just appeared. We had noses, we had chins, we had craniums, we had brains, we had the bone structure that we have now, and that we had the magic of thought, right? Just immediately just appearing suddenly, and we are completely unique on planet Earth. How does that...
pre-existing realities. You can have skyscrapers and primitive civilizations. You could add Atlantis and primitive civilizations in other parts of the world, which may have happened. Right now, we have skyscrapers and we have indigenous peoples and rainforests living still.
Right.
You may have had the evolutionary track that is well known by anthropologists with genetic intervention to create what we are, which seems to be some genetic freak show. Humans just don't fit in on this planet with everything else. There's something amiss. And yes, I agree with what you're saying.
Well, and if when I hear anybody bring up Darwin, I just want to explode. But if somebody wants to just talk about evolution and we're talking about 120,000 years, a little blip, a little grain of sand on the global 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence. 120,000 years we go and just do everything. Well, then how come that hasn't happened multiple times over the last 4.5 billion years? Why haven't...
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not like the conditions were such that it would be an impossibility. Absolutely.
Right,
and
right.
You would have, many people would agree with that it has happened. Yeah.
And Hugh, what do you think about that when somebody says, well, it just is? When you hear Richard Dawkins say,
I totally understand, but there's so many anomalies in the past as well. I mean, that popped up that go way back. I mean, we cover it. We've done a lot of research looking at even origins in America as well. Human origins going way back. 250,000 years we've reached back to modern type humans. So there's question marks popping up, and this is stuff like that is starting to be accepted now, that there may have been multiple origins, not just from Africa. Millions of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, or whatever. There's actually people have taken it seriously now, and this fits in with the ancient stories, the ancient myths and legends as well. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's what's been compelling me about these vast epochs of time.
Well, Jim brought it up earlier, and we're going to wrap up here. And again, I want to thank you guys. But if you take that little grain of sand that we've been talking, that little 120,000 years, and you have a timeline in front of you that's 4.5 billion years, you can drop that grain of sand, right? The evolution of man from then until now with computers anywhere in that timeline. So civilizations could have, risen and fallen multiple times, and they are dissolved in the dirt below our feet. You know what I mean? And that's
absolutely.
That's
yes.
it.
You might have 3 rises and falls of great civilizations in that time frame. Absolutely.
Hundreds.
No, it's true. Yeah. What am I saying? No. That's it is that with our book, with our investigations into all that, megalithic sites and giant skeleton lore and reports, we're just trying to answer that question, or at least to encourage people. So our new book is Giants on Record, Hugh Newman, Vieira. I would encourage audience members to buy it, not because it's self-serving, but it would be a book that I would love to read. We hit it from all these cool angles: esoterics and mystics, native legends, It's just loaded with great stuff. And I say that because I would like to get in people's hands, see what they think of it, have them, investigate accounts in their area. In the show, we investigated many of these things, and we would find, you're making a show, you're documenting this thing in real time. It's difficult. It's challenging. I don't know what the hell we're going to find. Hugh and I, we go to the Rockingham Library, and we find the handwritten notes of the historian talking about this giant chief had double rows of teeth, and his skeleton was wired together in the office. And then we try to hunt down the bones. It's just like there were so many of these stories where they were all made up, and I just want people to see the vast scope of evidence and how ignorant it is just to blow it off and try to belittle someone because they bring this up, and then put it in a pillowcase and whack a skeptic over the head with it.
Right.
I would encourage people to grab it and see what they think of it. I really would. I think Hugh and I have spent so much time, several years now, working on it. Both our heads want to explode. We finally finished it today, and I think it's excellent.
The links for everything are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And, of course, you have your conference November 7th. How can people get tickets and information for that?
Yeah, we're doing me and Andrew Collins organised a fairly large conference in London with Graham Hancock, Danny Hillman, and Jim, and everyone is speaking there. But we're going to be in America as well, and I think if people want to come and hang out with us, we're going to be at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in New York State, on the 14th of November. And we're doing a thing in Jim's local town, Ashfield, on the 17th of November. But we'll put it all up on Facebook and megalithomania.co.uk so people can sort of see what we're up to. But but I think we're very excited about this conference. Jim's coming over to England for the first time. I'm going to show him around Stonehenge and Avebury and Glastonbury. So hopefully we might bump into some people at the conference and. There's a lot going on, and I think this conference is at the cutting edge of that. We're all going to be filming it. We'll give it all away afterwards as well. So,
yeah, I want to throw out October 26th on the History Channel at 9:00. My brother and I just wrapped up a 2-hour special on the Lost Colony of Roanoke. That it really came out slick. It's really cool. I promise no dry humps. No fake promises. It really is a very, very compelling and awesome show. And I think if you watch it, you would enjoy it. I think the promos are running very soon. It's October 26th on History. It's about Roanoke Island, the Lost Colony.
I can't wait to see that. And I'm not kidding about that. What was funny, and it was you just said dry humps. I've got my things that I do with History Channel too as well, and my criticisms. And one of the things, it seems like you always know how it's going to end, right? Whether it's Bigfoot or what, you just know how the ending is. But last night, I don't know if you guys caught the special on Alcatraz. Did you guys catch that last night?
I did actually. I talked to my producer about that show, and it was good, and they had a very good conclusion. Yeah.
It was excellent. I was like,
yes, it was.
I feel like I did something. I got to
you don't want to take a shower after the show because you feel gross and you got jobbed.
Yes.
And I think you'll feel the same way after our show. You'll be like, wow.
I can't wait.
I'm not just talking up my game. It was a collaboration. It really. And it's happening in real time. Like the solving of the Lost Colony seems to be happening right now with new finds at Jamestown, at Hatteras Island, and out in Bertie County. But anyways, I agree, and I think the audience feels disrespected. I don't know if it's like, oh, we got to keep them dragging along here. We got to promise something over the top.
Right.
But I agree. Don't insult your audience. Don't give them the dry hump. Don't give them the false promises. Like Hugh and I, we did our show. We don't know what we're going to find. That's the joy of it. That's the interesting part. And it might be nothing, but it might be something really cool, or it could be just very cool stuff like documents that we find that are, wow, that's compelling. But the point is, I'm not down with insulting the audience, so
that's
hopefully people will dig the Roanoke special.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jim. October 26th. I'll be checking it out. Jim, we got to get you and your brother on after it airs, okay?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Get Billy and Linus the cat. We'll all be here.
You got it. I'll talk to you guys. Hey, I had an absolutely perfect evening tonight. Thank you so much for all that you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's been
we appreciate it. That's great.
It's been really cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you guys.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, Hugh.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay, good night.
Good night, John Boy. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy.
All right, Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira, and that was a perfect night on Fade to Black. So that's 2 in a row. That's last night with Ron Felber, tonight with Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Jim brought up a good point. He's absolutely right. And, you guys hear me talk about this all the time, which is, you just want to have a result, a resolution on the shows, on a series. You just do. I talked to Scott Walter about this. You want to have, you want to have something. You know what I mean? And last night, I don't know if everybody caught that show on Alcatraz last night, but it had a great ending. And if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. That show kicked major booty. That was a good show last night. I forget what it was called. It's Alcatraz, the 1962 Escape. Man. Okay, where was I? Klaatu. I just wanted to comment on this. He said, ask a tough question. Van Halen or Montrose? That was good. And I'm glad you guys are paying attention. What a great show tonight. I think we pretty much lined up everything that I wanted to talk about. So, where was I? Hold on. It was, yeah. Okay, I got to get a couple of these things out of the way really quick. This was announced today, and I found it fascinating that Earth's gravitational pull is massaging the moon, and it's opening up faults in the lunar crust. Just as the moon's gravitational pull causes seas and lakes to rise and fall as tides on Earth, the Earth exerts tidal forces on the moon. Scientists have known this for a while, but now they found that the Earth's pull actually opens up faults on the moon. The researchers analyzed data from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which launched back in 2009. In 2010, the spacecraft helped scientists discover that the moon is shrinking. High-resolution LRO images revealed 14 lobe-shaped fault scars, or cliffs, which likely formed as the hot interior of the moon cooled and contracted, forcing the solid crust to buckle. Interesting. And the report was just published, and there's more on this to follow. And let's see. A 62-year-old recreational hunter lost in a hot and arid region of the Australian outback survived without water for 6 days by eating ants. I've got a whole thing on this. He was found 9 miles from where he became lost. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with this. Let me get this in here really quick. A new startup, it's called Light, L-I-G-H-T, Light, has created a new hybrid camera and smartphone. It's called the L16. The device is actually 16 individual cameras. And when you take a photo, 10 of the cameras fire at the same time. Then software merges the individual shots into one high-resolution 52-megapixel image. The company thinks the L16 will start to replace large cameras like DSLRs with interchangeable lenses. This is reality. This is not some Kickstarter gadget. They've raised $35 million in 2 rounds of funding, and this camera will be in stores near you very soon. Thank you, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Absolutely perfect evening. Fade to Black's executive producers Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew, the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. Tomorrow night, right here, Seth Shostak, John Ventry. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2015 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network and cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.